of LRT. Remember, both of those projects have already been delayed. Now, the problem, he says, is that they are currently a bit handcuffed.
We're watching it, but there's not a lot we can do right now. Just like the private sector says, at some point, if the cranes don't come back, for example, there's only so much work you can do before you run out of work.
He says they're hopeful they can get back to the table soon. Chris Curry's City News.
City News Time, 9:01. A traffic note for you in the downtown. The March for Life scheduled around Parliament Hill this afternoon. It is a 26th year and thousands of anti-abortion protesters along with counter-protesters are expected.
The March for Life protest, a demonstration that typically attracts thousands, comes as the reemergence of the landmark Roe v. Wade case in the States brings renewed attention to the issue on both sides of the border. A counter-demonstration by abortion rights advocates will also take place near Parliament today. Both groups will be rallying about the implications of a leaked U.S. Supreme Court draft opinion showing the court is about to overturn the 1973 law protecting a woman's right to choose. Meantime, the 9 justices of the U.S. High Court will gather in private today for their first scheduled meeting since last week's leak, the source of which is still being investigated. Karen Rebo, The Canadian Press.
Now, this march will begin at 1:30 on the Hill, going through the downtown and then back to Parliament Hill by 3. Police say there will be rolling road closures starting at 1 o'clock this afternoon. The force suggesting if you're a downtown commuter, think of an alternate route home just in case it goes longer. Vehicle exclusion zone is still in effect, so that's Wellington between Elgin and Bank. City News Time, 9:02. Now your forecast with weather specialist Denise Andriacci.
Another hot and sunny day here across Ottawa and Smiths Falls. We're expected to hit near 31 degrees. Will definitely be one of the hot spots in not only the province but the entire country. Lots of sunshine today. Our overnight low for Ottawa near 16, the daytime high 31.
And right now, 18 degrees in Ottawa, 17 degrees in Smiths Falls. Ontario's main party leaders making stops across southern Ontario today as they campaign for votes. Up first is Liberal leader Stephen Del Duca, scheduled to begin a number of stops in the Greater Toronto area with an announcement that is scheduled to take place right now. Then New Democrat leader Andrea Horwath detailing her party's mental health coverage. That plan will be released in about 15 minutes from now. Conservative leader Doug Ford in Kitchener, 9:30, his first announcement, and the Green Party of Ontario set to release its costed platform. That will happen in Toronto at 10 o'clock this morning. Russian forces are continuing to pound a steel mill in the southeastern Ukrainian port city of Mariopol.
The airstrikes on the Azovstal steel plant came as Ukraine offered to release Russian prisoners in exchange for the safe evacuation of badly injured Ukrainian fighters holed up inside the plant. Ukraine's Deputy Prime Minister has said that negotiations for the swap were underway. Meanwhile, the Ukrainian military said Russian forces also fired artillery and grenade launchers at Ukrainian troops in the direction of Zaporizhia and also north of the city of Kharkiv in northeastern Ukraine. The military also reported Russian strikes in the Chernihiv and Sumy regions to the north. I'm Karen Chamas.
And I'm Andrew Boyle for News Anytime. Follow up online at ottawa.citynews.ca.
When the headlines say X,
he's got the Y.
It's the Rob Snow Show on Rogers TV and City News.
101.1 FM and 1310 AM.
Good morning, Ottawa. Welcome to the Rob Snow Show. Rob is off. Derick Fage here from Rogers TV filling in. Oh my goodness, I'm so excited about this show. What a great show we have ahead for you. You know what? We are going to dive right in. So we got lots to talk about. Let's take a look at the news that everyone will be talking about today. Let's start locally here. The Ottawa Hospital has asked the City of Ottawa to contribute $150 million toward the construction of its new Civic campus at Dow's Lake. Many city councillors, by the way, say it would be unfair for local residents to foot part of the bill for the new hospital. The city's chief financial officer, Wendy Stevenson, called it the largest request for city funding she had ever received. I'm not surprised to hear that. The decision on if the municipality should cover the $150 million will be left to the next city council. The total cost, by the way, let's just go through this. So the total cost $2.8 billion. All right. The Ontario government's going to cover $2.1 billion, but requires the Ottawa community to cover $700 million towards the project. The campaign to create tomorrow has a goal of raising $500 million towards that $700 million, which was announced by Executive Chair of the campaign, Roger Greenberg, as you may recall. So you have the ask of $150 million from the city, and then you've got the final $50 million, which is expected to be covered by hospital revenue, such as, parking. Get ready to pay more for parking, I guarantee you that. Roger Greenberg, by the way, has stated that our situation is very simple. We either raise the local share or the province drops us down to the bottom of the list. He says there's 9 other hospitals that are on the list and we'll drop down to the bottom, and they'll come back to us in 20 years from now and ask us if we've changed our minds. Now, they've already started, I wouldn't, not necessarily call it construction, but the clearing of the area. I can't necessarily see, I would argue with Roger Greenberg that, we're not coming back in 20 years on this, okay? Things have begun here. The province has already said they're covering $2.1 billion. It's not like we're stopping everything here if we don't, come up with $150 million right off the bat. So don't panic. Everybody listening right there, don't panic. Okay? There's still plenty of time. By the way, since amalgamation, the city has never contributed cash for the local share of hospital construction, if you're wondering. Ottawa City Councillors, by the way, voted 15-8 to direct staff to come up with ways to fund the $150 million request from the Ottawa Hospital. So that's where it stands now. Again, this is going to be bumped to the next council, a new council. A lot of new faces are going to be around that table, as we've talked about. Matthew Fleury, we know, we spoke to him yesterday. He is not running for re-election. So a lot of new faces. We want to hear from you, by the way, in this talkback hour. So if this is something you'd like to talk about, are you okay? Because what they're looking at is perhaps a tax levy, right? You're going to put a tax levy. I would imagine it would most definitely be on your property tax bill. So there'd be a levy spread out over many years. Okay. We want to know, are you okay with that? Are you, as citizen of Ottawa, who, this hospital is going to be incredibly important to all of us. Are you okay with helping out with that $150 million? Okay. So we can talk about that during the talkback hour. By the way, we'll get City Councillor Carol-Ann Meehan's reaction a little bit later on in the show. She's going to talk about that. The other thing we want to talk about off the top here is the Conservative Party leadership debate last night. Right? Happened last night. Did you watch any of it? And if you didn't, you're in luck because we got a little recap for you here, okay? Big thing was a theme again. I don't think you'll be surprised to hear this. Was division. Division of the country, division of the Conservative Party. Candidates took turns pointing at each other and blaming them for disunity within the party. The televised debate, by the way, was held in the Edmonton Convention Centre. Loudest applause repeatedly went to Pierre Poilievre, with the moderator, of course, saying, please stop applauding and stop booing Jean Charest. So, I was talking to David about this. Poor moderators. It doesn't matter who it is that they get to moderate. Nobody's ever happy with the moderator. Am I right, David? Nobody is. It doesn't matter.
It's like they're like the referee in hockey, right? If your team loses, if you don't like your candidate's performance, just blame the moderator. Easy peasy.
I said to David yesterday, I wish someone would give me a call about moderating some of these debates, and writings and so forth. And then I read this story again, and it reminds me of how much everyone, like David just explained, hates referees and moderators.
You're really putting yourself out there. Yeah. I mean, it's like a public service, I guess. But
sure, I can shoulder it. I don't mind. All right. Where was I? Oh, yeah. Loudest applause repeatedly went to Pierre Poilievre, who said his vision for the country is about giving people freedom to take back control of their lives. You might have heard that once or 1,000 times over the last 2 months from Pierre Poilievre. Major part of his pitch is about fighting inflation. So during the debate, he took specific aim at Bank of Canada Governor Tiff Macklem, saying he would fire him because Canada's inflation rate is the highest it's been in decades. Poilievre said the Bank of Canada governor has allowed himself to become the ATM machine of this government. And so I would replace him with a new governor who would reinstate our low inflation mandate, protect the purchasing power of our dollar, and honor the working people who earn those dollars. I wonder, is he taking a page from former U.S. President Donald Trump? Remember, he threatened to can Jerome Powell, chair of the Federal Reserve of the United States. And speaking of Jerome Powell, by the way, it's not just President Donald Trump. Biden has called inflation unacceptably high and said that bringing it down is his top priority, the government's top priority. He reiterated that the Federal Reserve has primary responsibility for fighting inflation, placing the burden on the central bank after a report Wednesday showed continuing price hikes. So, it's not just here in Canada we're talking inflation. It's around the world, by the way. It's down south. They have their own issues of inflation. This is a big topic. Jean Charest, by the way, Quebec's former premier, responded by saying those remarks were irresponsible by Pierre Poilievre, and sowed distrust in the system. And I think Rob mentioned this last week. Do you really want the government in control of the Bank of Canada? I kind of like that it's independent. I know it's a crown corporation, but I like the idea that it's arm's length and independent. I don't necessarily like the idea of my government controlling the Bank of Canada, to be honest. But, hey, some people obviously agree with Pierre Poilievre. He's getting a lot of applause. Leslyn Lewis also said after the debate, she found the comment concerning, saying it undermines credibility in our economic system. So it was a long debate. If you didn't watch it, it was about 2 hours. Candidates sparred about the war in Ukraine, supply management, immigration, all the usual big topics as well. All of the candidates were also asked to share this is what I love when they ask these things, right? Because it really sets it up nicely for all of us to just sit back and go, oh, this should be good. This should be good. All of the candidates asked to share a summary of what their vision for Canada under a conservative government is. If you didn't have a chance to tune in last night, here's a taste of what each candidate was pitching, okay? We'll start with Scott Aitchison's vision for Canada. Here it is.
My vision for Canada is to renew the promise that the next generation will be better off than today's. High grocery bills, a housing crisis, inflation, all make life harder. Millions of Canadians are struggling to make ends meet, and a Liberal government does little more than make inflation worse. Divisive rhetoric leaves millions of Canadians feeling frustrated and even demonized by their own government. The answer to today's challenge is not to fan the flames of those frustrations and make Canadians more angry. Those politics of division have left you behind. You deserve leaders who care more about your success than our own. I seek to lead the Conservative Party and our team to form a government that delivers more than just photo ops, but real solutions to the challenges we face.
Little shot there to Trudeau. Photo ops. We want to do more than photo ops. That's, again, Scott Aitchison's vision for Canada. Let's go to Roman Babber's.
My name is Roman Babber. My vision for Canada is a return to being a credible democracy, that we don't censor people or speech, that we end 21st century segregation and let people make their own medical decisions, that we restore Canadian kindness and respect diversity of opinion. My vision for Canada is that we unleash our economic opportunity by making us a natural resources superpower. My vision for Canada is that we let Canadians work, love their families, and that government finally leave us alone.
Let's head over to Patrick Brown's vision for Canada.
My vision of Canada includes a Conservative Party that builds a broad, multi-faith, multicultural coalition that can win. We've lost 3 elections in a row, and we've forgotten how to win in areas like suburban Canada, in the GTA where I get elected. We'll never win with a divisive leader who repels voters and doubles down on discriminatory policies that trample over the religious freedoms of Canadians. The choice before the party is clear. Do we want an unelectable party leader who drives voters away, walks straight into liberal traps, giving unclear answers on divisive issues like abortion, and wedges Conservatives against each other? Are Are we ready to win? I'm Mayor Patrick Brown, and I'm ready to win, and we need your help.
I wonder who Patrick Brown could be talking about. Perhaps it's our next leadership hopeful, Pierre Poilievre.
Is one where you, the citizens, are masters and your government is servant. It is one where people have the freedom to take back control of their lives. That means freedom from inflation, so that hardworking single mothers can afford nutritious food for their kids. Freedom from inflation so that 32-year-olds don't have to live in their parents' basements, that they can actually afford their own homes. Freedom from inflation and carbon taxes that have made it unaffordable for working people to fill their trucks with gas. The freedom to speak without fear and censorship, and the freedom to make your own medical decisions. In other words, the freedom to be master of your own destiny and a captain of your own life. Thank you.
I hope you weren't taking shots every time he said freedom last night. Let's go over to Leslyn Lewis's vision for Canada.
My vision for Canada is to once again make Canada a beacon of hope and opportunity for all. A nation where we respect our charter and where our government never has the opportunity to freeze our bank accounts without a court order. National unity is at an all-time low. Many people have been traumatized by COVID lockdowns and government mandates. I'm running to be a bridge builder, to unite the party and to unite the country.
All right, there's Leslyn Lewis. And finally, Jean Charest.
Well, thank you very much. And first, let me say how delighted I am to be here in Edmonton, Alberta, and to join with my fellow candidates on the stage. You're asking the fundamental question of this leadership campaign, and the reason I'm running is because I see a country that is deeply divided. And I am running because I believe that national unity is the #1 challenge of any prime minister in this country. That nothing big, nothing of substance gets done unless we're able to bridge the country between the East and the West. And that's what I've done all my life. It's what I've fought for. And that's what the Conservative Party needs to be about in the next election campaign, to offer that national vision.
And there we have it. And there we have it. Each party leader hopeful's vision for Canada. My Conservative friends out there, I would like to invite you to call during the talkback hour. You know what happens each and every day. If you're first time listening, guess what? We do it every day, 10 to 11 o'clock. We open the lines to hear from you, the listener, opinions on topics that are on top of mind. And of course, I think this is on top of mind for every Conservative voter, whether you voted in the past, present, or you're thinking about it in the future. We want to hear from you. 613-750-1310 is our number. You call after the 10 o'clock news. If you have opinions on the leadership race and debate last night, we want to hear them. We can also talk about the hospital, the Ottawa Civic Hospital, $150 million they're asking from the city of Ottawa to contribute to that $2.8 billion. We have a great show ahead. This is the Rob Snow Show. Derick Fage filling in right here on City News and on Rogers TV.
For the ashes I will learn. Tobacco down, my prayers up for the years that I have yearned. This disconnect, I will object, my future won't be burned. I show respect, I will connect, my future won't be turned. When I do this, do it for the youth. Indigenous, give it back to my roots. Do it for my kin, do it for the truth. With diligence when I'm back in the booth. When I move in, move for me too. Walk all together, we move as a group. No matter the weather, no matter the route. Birds of a feather, we say boo true. Oh, get my, oh, get my. Just let your spirit guide our future generations. Oh, get my, oh, get my. Just let your spirit guide our future generations. Come on. Oh, get my, oh, get my. Just let your spirit guide our future generations. Oh, get my, oh, get my. Just let your spirit guide. Fresh on the scene, follow a dream. Living life clean if you know what I mean. Don't want you to follow, I want you to lead. The youth of tomorrow, they're gonna see. Never live faded, keep my hair braided. Leading a nation with no separation. Know we can make it, know we can break it. Feel the vibration through all for civil context, but cripple the next with little respect. Fixing the past, 'cause you know we all blessed. Opening doors, use education. Carry the torch with participation. Opening boards, use conversation. The future is yours, it's time that you take it. Oh, get my, oh, get my. Just let your spirit guide our future generations. Oh, get my, oh, get my. Just let your spirit guide our future generations. Come on. Oh, get my, oh, get my. Just let your spirit guide our future generations. Oh, get my, oh, get my. Just let your spirit guide our future generations. Revitalize traditions, let the youth bring it back. Revitalize traditions, let the future bring it back. Revitalize traditions, let the youth bring it back. Revitalize traditions, let the future bring it back. Just let your spirit guide our future generations. Oh, get my, oh, get my. Just let your spirit guide our future generations. Oh, get my, oh, get my. Just let your spirit guide our future generations.
Opinions.
The Rob Snow Show returns on Rogers TV and City News.
101.1 FM and 1310 AM.
Strong voice, strong opinions. I think that perfectly describes our next guest. By the way, Derick Fage here, filling in for Rob Snow. We are joined by Randall Denley, author and Ottawa Citizen columnist, and talking about his latest column, Ottawa's mayoralty contest is in desperate need of fresh faces, and I think many of us probably agree. Randall, welcome to the show. Great to have you back.
Thanks, Derick.
You question why being mayor of Ottawa seems to be very unattractive to people other than a few veteran politicians. Why do you think that is, Randall?
Because I don't think people see the opportunity. They just see the negative things that have happened in the last several years as described in the media. When, Jim Watson's been mayor for a long time, is his own way of doing things. People partly look at that like, oh my God, if I were the mayor, I'd be working 24/7. I'd have to be at every bake sale.
Right.
Well, you don't. That's just something he chooses to do. And then they look like, oh, the council. What a nightmare. They're always arguing about stuff. Well, that's politics. I wouldn't really expect everybody on the council to agree on everything all the time, or even most of the time. That's part of where a mayor needs skill. But if the mayor is a leader, and you have to be a leader if you're going to be the mayor.
Of course.
Most councillors want to follow. Lots of people follow Jim Watson. I'm sure they didn't think he was right all the time, but hey, he's a mayor.
Right.
Path of least resistance. And if you get elected on a platform, you're the one person in the city who has said, I've spoken to people in every ward. They've voted. They've said, what I propose to do is what they want done. And that's powerful with other councillors. Not all of them will agree, but they have to respect it. To me, being mayor of Ottawa is the single most important political job in this town. More important than being an MP, MPP, even a cabinet minister.
Agreed.
They don't have much direct effect on our lives, but the mayor and the way he leads council, that affects the way all of us live every day. There's a lot of people in Ottawa who do big things for public service. They go on hospital boards, charitable boards, they raise money, they contribute to the community in many ways. But those same kinds of people look at politics and go, oh, politics, it's so terrible,
That's true.
It really isn't.
Yeah, I agree with you, Denley. Randall Denley is who we're speaking with, author and Ottawa Citizen columnist. I agree with you, Randall. It does look, seem intimidating, as you said, because you see, people. Like you just gave the example of Jim Watson. I think of Matthew Fleury, who has decided, unfortunately, I think many people feel that it would have been great to see him throw his hat in the ring to run for mayor, but now he's decided not to run for re-election at all, regardless of whether it's councillor or mayor. But let's look at the candidates. There's not a lot to be excited about, and I'm not, this isn't disparaging any of the candidates. I just think, as you described it, it's kind of Oh, here we go. Some veteran politicians. And, let's start with Bob Chiarelli. I mean, last ran for mayor back in 2006. I'm not into ageism whatsoever. But, he's 80 going on 81. I think, his time has passed, in my opinion.
Yeah, it's hard to argue with that, Derick, and I think most people will feel the same way. Bob has contributed a lot to the community as a politician over time, without a doubt.
Yeah, I respect him a great deal. Absolutely.
But he's been out of politics for 4 years now, provincially, and municipally for far longer. And the last time he ran for mayor, he came third. He only got about 15% of the vote. So it wasn't like he retired as a popular mayor or he lost in a squeaker or something. And people made a pretty emphatic statement in that election and said, no, we don't want you. You're not our first choice and our second choice. You're coming third. So it takes a certain amount of ego, I guess, to think that you and only you can now step up and fix things at City Hall. But what a short lineup he's in. The only other person of any name recognition or consequence who's announced candidacy is Councillor Catherine McKinney.
And what do you think of Catherine's chances, or not even just chances? What do you think of Catherine McKinney, of them, being mayor? I think it speaks to the fact that it's another veteran politician that, we already know what their idea is, right?
Yeah, McKinney spent a lot of time in government, much of that as a staffer, but certainly has political experience. The challenge is that when you hold a kind of fairly rigid NDP type downtown-focused view, how does a candidate then appeal to people in the suburban and rural areas who tend to see life a little bit differently? And would McKinney really understand how they see life differently? I have to say I was disappointed but not surprised to see that McKinney was one of the people who opposed even coming up with a plan to pay $150 million for the new Civic Hospital, which is clearly something the city's going to have to do. And for anyone who wants to be mayor, you need to get those big picture things.
Right. Yeah, I don't think any of us are happy about it, but I don't see any issue whatsoever, Randall, of looking into
not being picked on. It's the way it works, and the Civic Hospital is an essential project for Ottawa. The big issue there is not how many trees will be cut down versus how many will be put in replacement, or oh my goodness, they're going to have a place to park cars, or even it's in the wrong place, let's move it. I mean, none of that stuff is going to happen. It's just, the plan is the plan. It's been around for years. People are a little late now to be criticizing it. And City Council needs to get on board. And if anyone who wants to be mayor, they need to see the value of these big issues and the value that presents to the community. So those are the choices that we have at the moment. And I think it is a dismal choice. I mean, there's clearly a path there for at least one other major candidate. And, like many others, I had hoped that Matt Fleury would be that candidate. But I guess for whatever personal career, family, lifestyle reasons, he's decided that now is not the right time and he's going to do something else with his life. And we may see him try to become mayor in the future, but there just needs to be somebody else.
Yeah.
And I'm, exhorting people in this column to say, look, this city is full of leaders. And I know a lot of them have been courted by people that want to see somebody run, but everybody's got a reason there not to run. Well, it's this, it's that. I don't like politics, or I wouldn't want to try to work with council, or it's the money. But if we have a responsibility, a collective responsibility to govern ourselves. If the province came along and said, there won't be an election for mayor this year, we're just going to appoint somebody, we'd be outraged.
Oh, my goodness, yeah.
We have a right to make this choice.
Absolutely.
Well, the first step to making the choice is having a choice to make.
Yeah.
And that means that somebody, one person of the million who live here, one additional person needs to step up and say, I can do it. I'm willing to serve for 4 years. I don't want to make a career out of this, but I think I can step in and make a difference because I've had experience in government or business or boards or something. Mm-hmm. Something that people can look at and think, there's a normal person who seems intelligent and capable of figuring things out, maybe not particularly ideological. That's good. It's city politics. But somebody who has a track record of actually getting things done.
Well, Randall, I look forward to your run for mayor. I'm just kidding.
I have my turn of politics.
I hear you. Randall, always a pleasure. Thanks so much for joining us today.
Bye.
All right, that's Randall Denley, author and Ottawa Citizen columnist. This is Derick Fage filling in on the Rob Snow Show. You're watching on Rogers TV, listening on City News.
News in Ottawa and the Valley. This is City News, now on 101.1 FM and 1310 AM.
It's Thursday, May 12th. Good morning. I'm Andrew Boyle. Right now in Ottawa, 22 degrees, 20 in Smiths Falls, and here's what's making news this hour. Liberal Party is promising to train over 3,000 more mental health experts for frontline response. Party leader Stephen Del Duca says that $3 billion increase in funding will go to mental health and addiction services. 1,000 of the new workers hired will deal with at-risk youth. NDP is asking Tory MPPs to pay back their riding associations for any money used to top up things like their housing allowance. 3 so far, including Nepean's Lisa MacLeod, have taken cash from their riding associations as a top-up. The New Democrats say not only should that money be repaid, but they would ban future top-ups if they are elected on June 2nd. The annual anti-abortion rally, typically attracting thousands, is set to descend on Parliament Hill this afternoon. Abortion rights advocates also plan to hold a counter-demonstration. Rallies come amid renewed attention on this issue as the landmark Roe v. Wade case that legalized abortion in the United States comes under fresh scrutiny. You can expect rolling road closures this afternoon, especially between noon and 3 throughout the downtown. And astronomers have revealed the first image of a massive black hole at the center of the Milky Way galaxy. As you can imagine, it's a black hole surrounded by light. City News Time, 9:35. I'm Andrew Boyle. For news anytime, follow up online at ottawa.citynews.ca.
The world is changing.
So keep up with Rob.
The Rob Snow Show returns on Rogers TV and City News, 101.1 FM and 1310 AM.
Welcome back to the show. Derick Fage here, and it is time for Ontario politics this week. We may have a few things to discuss. Oh, my goodness. Joining us, as usual, Lindsay Maskell, Liberal strategist and former advisor to Dalton McGuinty. Good morning, Lindsay.
Good morning, Derick.
And we also have Andrew Brander, Vice President with Crestview Strategy and former advisor to the Ford government. And good morning to you, Andrew.
Good morning.
My goodness, 1 week down, my friends. 3 weeks to go. What are your impressions of the leader's performance on the campaign trail so far? Is one person winning in your mind? I'll start with you, Lindsay. What do you think so far?
Well, there's an interesting contrast of they've all been doing things so differently, right? So first of all, Doug Ford, he hasn't had a media avail in 4 days, definitely been a little bit in hiding. And we are seeing him with more cars than we are with people on his highways and car message. Compared to, Andrea, this is her fourth kick at the can. She is looking her usual self, but not really breaking through. And we see that in the dip that she's had of being back in third place. And, look, the Liberals have done a really clean first week on the campaign trail of events, people-focused, with some catchy policy ideas. So they've taken three very different routes, but where they've been spending their time is very telling as well.
What about yourself, Andrew? How do you think things have gone so far for each leader?
Yeah, look, no surprises. I agree with Lindsay's assessment on all the leaders there. I think, the Premier kind of framed this election as business as usual, get it done. So I don't know why Lindsay would think all of a sudden, he's suddenly doing press conferences every day, because I think we've kind of come to expect that's not been necessarily his style. To Lindsay's point on Del Duca as well, I do think he had a decent week. I think the policies that Del Duca has been putting forward are very much designed to be attention-grabbing, headline-grabbing. Not really sure how thought out those policies are, but they certainly lead to the conversations that the Liberals want to have to be able to back up that statement that Lindsay just made on sort of being the obvious choice for the opposition votes to Ford to coalesce around and really position the NDP in a third place. The problem with that, as we know, is that we know the NDP vote is generally much more efficient than the Liberals vote. So even if the NDP is a few points behind the Liberals in terms of polls, that might end up being something quite different in terms of seat count on election day. But when we're talking about the leaders, I think they're all pretty much performing at the levels I think everyone was sort of expecting them to going into this.
Yeah, Lindsay, I mean, you mentioning Doug Ford being relatively quiet. I wonder if this is, first of all, his continuing strategy, and perhaps it's a good strategy, right? Relying on his budget as his campaign platform, right? I mean, he's pretty much put out his platform already, right? So not a lot of announcements are necessary. Maybe as far as they're concerned.
It didn't have much time to sell it, right? It was announce the budget and then head straight out to the campaign trail. I think the issue is that you do need to, basically, this is a job interview with Ontarian voters, right? They want to see you. They want you to be accessible. There is a public discourse that voters deserve to have. I also think it's setting up an issue a little bit like what we saw in the East Coast election, where the Liberals were supposed to win, and then the Conservatives won, where we saw a premier who stayed in hiding for a lot of the election, and that did not pan out for them.
It's a good example.
I would also say it's setting up a narrative around just you're seeing a lot of reporters tweeting about Stephen Del Duca out with no notes, no teleprompters, like Premier Ford. He doesn't do an announcement without a teleprompter. And this is leading up to the televised debate where it's supposed to be no notes. And we're hearing a lot of rumblings that the campaign is fighting for that, for Premier Ford to be able to have his binder. And people need to see, voters deserve to see what their options are and how they actually perform and what they really know about the issues and what they're going to do about them. So
yeah, Andrew,
I think it does.
Right. Sorry, go ahead, Lindsay.
No, I just think it's different than business as usual because you are in a job interview. So you can, what you've done for the last 4 years, you now have to sell it.
Yeah, Andrew, what do you make of that? Because I agree with Lindsay to that extent of, sort of looking unprepared because you're scripted and you're still, I don't know, you still have that monotone kind of way about yourself and you're using your taglines and your little slogans instead of just having a conversation. But maybe he feels that's been working for him all this time. Why change now? I don't know.
Yeah, I think it's a bit of that, and to Lindsay's point on the Premier not having a lot of time to sell this plan of his. We when we talked about what was in the budget a few weeks ago, Lindsay talked about the fact that there wasn't anything new in it, and there really wasn't, right? Which is again this promise that people have gotten from the Premier, which is consistency. This is a plan. These are the things we've been talking about as a government. At least that's what they're saying for the last greater part of the last year. So there's no surprises in this plan, and therefore maybe that's why again you're not seeing these new flashy announcements. These are things that the government has said are going to be priority as we come out of the pandemic and focus on economic recovery.
But I like what Lindsay said because, okay, I don't disagree with that, but you need to remind people, right, of what it is. I mean, you can't count on people, right, they put out their budget and that's going to be our platform, and people can just go online and read it.
Yeah, I'd agree with Lindsay's assessment that this is a job interview. But it's also, for an incumbent government, there's a little bit of a different bent on that, right? Which is they have a record to be judged on. They know what they're getting. So instead of it being a job, interview, I'd say it's more of a job performance review for the government. Yeah. And then it's up to voters to decide and put those criticisms to the people who are trying to replace that candidate. Right. And so I think that is a burden that someone like Andrea Horvath or Stephen Del Duca need to strive a little bit more towards meeting that objective and convincing Ontarians that they can do the job. And it's up to the Premier to convince Ontarians that he is the best candidate to stay there.
Well, they're definitely
he has a record, right?
Yeah, and those two are definitely.
And I would say,
go ahead.
Yeah, just the one other thing I would say on this is, if we actually think back to like year one of the Doug Ford government, you think about the chaos, the union strife, the way decisions were being made. I don't think anyone would have thought, the amount of headlines that we read that this was going to be a one-term government. I don't think anyone expected us to be, 20 days out from an election and, have the Premier with the highest approval ratings of all three leaders. So clearly something's working for him in the approach that he's doing, that he's delivering on. And I think it is that steady hand, mentality, which is, it's not broken, let's not fix it.
Right. You mentioned poll numbers. We'll get to those in a moment too. And there has been some big announcements by the NDP and the Liberals. So we'll come back and talk about those because I think the biggest issue for everyone is cost of living. And Andrea Horvath making a pretty big announcement there yesterday about cost of living. So we'll come back and talk about that. And Stephen Del Duca's plan to spend another $1 billion to eliminate surgery backlogs. I'm speaking with Andrew Brander, Vice President with Crestview Strategy and former advisor to the Ford government, and Lindsay Maskell, Liberal strategist and former advisor to Dalton McGuinty. We'll be back after this. You're watching on Rogers TV and listening on City News.
The sun's calling, change with the warning. I won't win anything if I give everything.
I was so excited when I found out that I was given this grant to be able to make this concert, because I knew it was going to be the first opportunity that I was able to play these songs for others. You know, this album was recorded really, truly in isolation. Like everybody else, we were locked down for a bit. So you're going to see, I think, the joy of playing live, of being together.
For me, as someone who owns a business in Ottawa that's directly working with music, I own a recording studio, it is important because it gives a sense of confidence in terms of having support from a lot of different places. We all know in Canada, there are all kinds of city, provincial, and federal people who provide funding for artists, and just seeing how invested Ottawa is and expanding the reputation of Ottawa as a music and entertainment city, running a business in that city, it makes you just feel better that someone's going to support you, help you, and have your back.
Well, firstly, I'm seeing friends that I haven't seen in 2 years, so that is kind of stabbing me in the heart a little bit, but I'm also just so happy to be able to make art with all of these friends again. And I've been treated like an absolute rock star from the moment I just kind of knocked on the door and said, hey, can I unload my gear? Everybody's so helpful, and you're just used to kind of dragging all your stuff around, and it's such a hard business to be in. So this is a dream come true for any local artist who gets to participate in a series like this.
Oh, I feel like I need to keep pinching myself. It's an amazing experience and opportunity for us, so thank you so much. It's been a long couple months. Our last show was in December. This is the first time we've actually been in the same room together since. So it's really an amazing opportunity for us, and the beautiful theater, and to have Rogers here, and thank you, Mike, and so it's a dream come true.
I'm here with one of my best friends, Alex, and we haven't performed in almost 2 years because of COVID. And it feels really good to be back on a big stage like Meridian, and I'm really honored that you guys invited me here today.
Having an organization that lets the artists do their thing with such a range of styles and influence, and to kind of have that ability to meet the public and to meet the people who would listen to them, can't be overstated. So super excited about it. I know a lot of musicians in town and a lot of music lovers in town who are really excited about it too. So I mean, it's an event in which there's talk, you know, there's a lot of buzz around it, and I wouldn't be surprised if it goes on for a long time and does a lot of great things for local musicians and connecting them with the listeners that love them.
The Rob Snow Show returns
on Rogers TV and City News, 101.1 FM
and 1310 AM.
Welcome back. We are talking politics because this is Ontario Politics This Week, and joined as usual by Lindsay Maskell, Liberal strategist and former advisor to Dalton McGuinty, and Andrew Brander, Vice President with Crestview Strategy and former advisor to the Ford government. Let's talk about some of those big announcements. One of them, Andrea Horvath, out with a big pitch for reducing car insurance by 40% on Wednesday. That announcement really dominated the news cycle. So along with that 40% reduction in car insurance, also saying that the government would freeze auto insurance for a year and a half and establish a commission to study how to create a public auto insurance system in Ontario. And this is, I think, what voters are looking for at things like this, because cost of living is the big issue for a lot of people. I would say the majority. Lindsay, what did you think about because we've seen this before, these kinds of promises, and they haven't come to fruition.
Yeah, and you know, the tough thing with Andrea is this being her fourth run, is that we've heard this before. So to me, this was not a new announcement from her. I am not a rare Toronto driver, but I am a Toronto driver. I'm from rural Ontario. I keep a car. I have unfortunately had a severe accident before, so I think I have pretty high insurance rates, but I also, it's one of those things that I just by instinct do not believe politicians can do something about. So, and I think that it is falls in those affordability announcements, like when we talk about gas prices, that people think these are some market things and personal indicator items that we can't do anything about as government. So I think affordability and then healthcare are the massive issues in this campaign. But I think we have to talk, I think politicians and parties need to be talking to voters about realistic things that can be immediate and really affect their pocketbooks on the things that they, touch every single day, right? The things they interact with every day, where that would feel noticeable. You pay your insurance either once a month or I pay it once a year. But if you're talking about things like taking transit and every day $1 a ride was saving you money, or every day you went to the grocery store, it was saving you money, these are things that would have a bigger impact on people's affordability issues that really are impacting everyone. I just think with Andrea, car insurance, again, a politician standing with cars. I am a driver. To me, it doesn't create the excitement that people who are, as if we're going to continue to use the job interview reference, it doesn't seem like that it's exciting, that you're thrilled about this job, or that you have the people excitement, that people are excited about you running, and that emotion that voters need to feel about you and your campaign when you're standing there with cars on something we've heard before.
Right, yeah, and interesting, this public auto insurance system, I know that, it's in BC, Manitoba, Saskatchewan. I know Quebec has a public-private mix. We had callers yesterday saying, from British Columbia, had a couple of callers saying within that public auto insurance system in British Columbia, they were paying more than they are here in Ontario. And I don't know much about a public systems insurance system whatsoever. I haven't done much research on it, but it doesn't sound like the be-all and end-all. And then I think, Andrew, Lindsay mentioned saving money at the grocery store, and we have the Liberals promising to cut the sales tax on prepared meals under $20, which, I look at that and, prepared meals to me, I don't see low-income people, necessarily turning to. I mean, those prepared meals aren't exactly cheap. You know what I'm saying?
No.
Like, let's cut costs on things other than prepared meals is how I looked at it. I don't know. What do you think about, some of these announcements from the NDP, the 40%, Stephen Del Duca, the $1 billion? There's a lot of money being thrown around here, Andrew.
Yeah, I think a lot of people are really struggling with the best path to address the affordability issue. So to the root of the question, yes, the ballot box issue is going to be affordability and those pocketbook issues. On the auto insurance issue specifically, you're absolutely right. People, the PCs promised this in the last campaign, and quite frankly, they didn't do anything on it because the realities of the system just really don't allow for there to be a lot of movement in it without taking the kinds of drastic measures that you were referencing there in terms of a public system. But that's why the PCs have come out with these sort of more consumer-facing offers to motorists specifically that talk about a temporary break at the gas pumps, the refund on the license plate stickers, making highways toll-free, building more highways so people are spending less money on gas. And that's why you're seeing in that Abacus poll that came out this week, they actually asked a specific question around those who owned a car and those who didn't, and how much more likely they are to vote for the Conservatives, because they're seeing the actual returns on some of those commitments, and those are things that resonate with people when they're paying $2 a liter at the pumps.
Yeah, and Lindsay, it's interesting, that that Andrew just brought up, the Abacus poll, because plenty of polls out in the last week, and one of the more surprising results was from Abacus data, which we had David Coletto on the show yesterday, that show Ford is leading in both unionized and non-unionized households. That must come as a surprise to you?
Not exactly.
I mean, polls are polls, at the same time too. I'm not going to over-exaggerate polls. I mean, we've seen they can be incredibly wrong too.
Yeah, and there are different types of unions, right? There are we have building and construction trade unions that I very proudly work with. We have teachers unions, nurses. There are groups that the Ford government has really impacted, like teachers and union nurses that would be SEIU workers, PSWs that could be very anti Ford government. But then you also have public sector unions, trade unions that they have not been highly impacted by this government and have worked with them on some solutions for the sector. So it wouldn't surprise me that there's a split, especially when union households are often fantastic middle income Ontarian households usually have good income, have a pension. As the pensionless generation, we have other things, bigger worries, and so they have created a wonderful financial stability for themselves with their jobs, their professions, that they are engaged with what the government does, but probably have some financial securities that allow them to that stay the course. It might not affect their lives in the same way, but as you said, it was a split. There are some union sectors that have been highly negatively impacted by this government, so it fully makes sense that there was a split in that, but it does speak to the fact that this is no longer Andrea Horwath or the NDP's territory, right? They used to think that this was the Labour households, unionized voters were their bloc, and they just aren't anymore. Even when you see NDP members now running as independents, with the steelworkers supporting an independent candidate, for example. So it does speak a little bit more to some of the disarray that's happening with the NDP party figuring out what's their base and who do they represent now.
Well, and we've got 3 weeks to go. We've seen tens of billions of dollars promised, tens of thousands of jobs promised in different sectors. So, boy, oh boy, we'll see if those numbers continue. Lindsay and Andrew, always a pleasure having you. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Thanks,
Have a great week.
Thank you. You as well. That's Lindsay Maskell, Liberal strategist and former advisor to Dalton McGuinty, and Andrew Brander, vice president with Crestview Strategy and former advisor to the Ford government. I'm Derick Fage, and you're listening right here on City News.
Being a crossing guard works great as part of my schedule as a high school student because I still have time to do my tests and assignments while earning a little bit of cash on the side.
Working as a crossing guard fits into my current lifestyle because it gives me a lot of time during the day to pursue hobbies that I'm very interested in.
A friend of mine introduced me to this job. I didn't know it was actually a paid job.
I always start my day. It's a very little, I guess, few months baby, and she always comes with her dad on her pram, and the smile she has, like, oh my God.
Well, I think the OSC is a very good employer. They show quite clearly that they care about you. They're very polite.
They really make you feel like you're part of a family.
It's fun. I really enjoy it.
Gets us out of the house, too.
Yeah.
City News, now on 101.1 FM and 1310 AM.
It's Thursday, May 12th. Good morning. I'm Andrew Boyle. Right now in Ottawa, 22 degrees. In Smiths Falls, 20. Here's what's making news in Ottawa and the Valley. More promises from provincial parties as we inch toward the June 2nd vote. NDP says it will introduce universal mental health care. Leader Andrea Horvath says mental health is health care and patients should not have to shell out for every appointment. She says under the NDP plan, an OHIP card, not a credit card, will pay for those services. The party also asking Conservative MPPs who have received top-up cash from their riding associations for things like housing to be repaid. Under that party, those top-ups would be banned. Liberal leader Stephen Del Duca says his party will train over 3,000 more mental health experts for frontline response. Del Duca says there would be $3 billion increase in the funding to mental health and addiction services. 1/3 of the 3,000 new hires would deal with at-risk youth. A traffic note for you in the downtown today. It is the annual March for Life scheduled around Parliament Hill. Now, this is the 26th year, and thousands of anti-abortion protesters, along with counter-protesters, are expected. Now, the march will start at 1:30 on the Hill, go through the downtown, and then back to Parliament by 3 o'clock. Police say there will be some rolling road closures, and keep in mind the vehicle exclusion zone does remain in effect. That's along Wellington between Elgin and Bank. The force, though, does suggest for any downtown commuters, you might want to think about an alternate route home just in case it goes longer. City News Time, 10:02. Now your forecast with weather specialist Denise Andriacci.
Another hot and sunny day here across Ottawa and Smiths Falls. We're expected to hit near 31 degrees. Will definitely be one of the hot spots in not only the province but the entire country. Lots of sunshine today. Our overnight low for Ottawa near 16, the daytime high 31.
And right now it's 22 degrees in Ottawa, 20 degrees in Smiths Falls. Russian forces have been bombarding parts of eastern and southern Ukraine with airstrikes and cluster bombs, even as some areas in the northeast have been retaken by Ukrainian forces. Reporter Ian Pennell spoke to one woman who fled her village near Kharkiv.
92-year-old Olga was forced to flee her village outside Kharkiv. Unable to walk, she had to be rescued in this van.
Olga, you've lived through one war. What has this war been like for you?
It's terrible. Very frightening, she tells me.
Now, Kharkiv has suffered a heavy bombardment during this war. Britain's military says Russia reportedly withdrew its units, though, from that region, showing the country's inability to capture key Ukrainian cities. City News Time, 10:03. Prime Minister Trudeau taking part in a multi-country summit on COVID. American President Joe Biden co-hosting this second global summit on COVID-19, marking what he calls a tragic milestone. The U.S. approaching 1 million deaths from this coronavirus, which has killed at least 6.2 million worldwide. Germany, Indonesia, Senegal, and Belize are also co-hosting this virtual event. And Ottawa Senators defenseman Thomas Chabot has been named Team Canada's captain for the World Hockey Championships. Canada faces Germany on Friday in Helsinki. It's their first game of this tournament. I'm Andrew Boyle for News Anytime. Follow up online at ottawa.citynews.ca.
Talk back.
Hello. On the Rob Snow Show. The phone lines are open at 613-750-1310.
Now, the Rob Snow Show continues.
Well, welcome back to the Rob Snow Show. Derick Fage here, filling in for Rob today and tomorrow. And boy, oh boy, this is, one of our favorite parts of the show, if not our favorite, because we hand over the airwaves to you, the listener, each and every day at 10 o'clock. We hand the reins over to you. Talk about things that are in the news, and oh boy, there's plenty of talk about. So let me just throw out a couple of things for you. Again, by the way, just a heads up, our number here, 613-750-1310. It is the Talk Back Hour here on the Rob Snow Show. What can we talk about? Well, let's talk this new Ottawa Civic campus. I mean, how hard can it be to build a hospital in Ottawa? Okay, I know it's hard. It's $2.8 billion project here. It's a huge project. A lot goes into projects like this. The latest on the long and winding tale of the new Ottawa Hospital Civic Campus is that the project is going to be short $150 million. Okay? $150 million. I'll do the breakdown for you in just a moment. But that's what they're asking from the city. Okay? It's fallen to the city to come up with that cash. At yesterday's city council meeting, your elected officials voted to direct city staff to find ways to raise the 9-figure sum to help pay for the new hospital near Dow's Lake. Now, they didn't actually decide before anyone panics, although it could be inevitable. They didn't actually decide that there will be a tax levy to raise this money. Staff are going to spend the next year studying various different ways that they could find this revenue. Because don't forget, this hospital I don't think will officially open. I don't think it will be officially complete, but it will open, I think, various parts starting in 2028. So we're quite a ways away here. So there's the question of raising property taxes to pay for a project that is within provincial jurisdiction. This isn't new. By the way, it is not new. We have seen this happen in other jurisdictions. So as promised, I'll bring again 613-750-1310. Give us a call. Let us know what you think of this idea that the city of Ottawa is now being asked to pay. So the total cost, as I mentioned, $2.8 billion. The Ontario government will cover $2.1 billion, but then it requires the Ottawa community to cover $700 million, that extra $700 million toward the project. So where are we coming up with the $700 million? Well, the campaign to create tomorrow has a goal of raising $500 million towards the $700 million. That was announced by Executive Chair of the campaign, Roger Greenberg. So then you have to ask, you need $150 million from the city, and then, okay, Derick, you're missing $50 million. Okay, the $50 million, they say, is expected to be covered by hospital revenue. Now, Roger Greenberg, the executive chair, has stated that our situation is very simple. We either raise the local share or the province drops us down to the bottom of the list. He explains that there's 9 other hospitals that are on this list and will drop down to the bottom, and then they'll come back to us in 20 years and ask us if we've changed our minds. I think the 20 years might be a slight exaggeration, just a slight exaggeration. But he may be right. By the way, since amalgamation, the city has never contributed cash for the local share of the hospital. Want to get your thoughts on this. 613-750-1310. Ottawa City Councillors, by the way, voted, if you're wondering what the vote was, voted 15-8. 15-8 to direct staff to come up with ways to fund the $150 million request from the Ottawa Hospital. Are you okay with paying a tax levy to fund the new Civic Hospital? By the way, we're going to get reaction from City Councillor Carol and Meehan a little bit later on in the show. The other thing we can talk about is the Conservative Party leadership debate last night. Did you watch any of it? What's your reaction? Big theme was division of the country, division of the Conservative Party's. Candidates took turns pointing at each other, blaming them for disunity within the party. So we can talk about that as well. A major part of this, of course, was Pierre Poilievre and his pitch about fighting inflation. During the debate, he took specific aim at Bank of Canada Governor Tiff Macklem, saying he would fire him because Canada's inflation rate is the highest it's been in decades. By the way, inflation's high everywhere. If you look down, to our neighbors down south, Biden has called inflation unacceptably high and has said that bringing it down is his top priority. He reiterated that the Federal Reserve has the primary responsibility for fighting inflation, placing the burden on the central bank after a report Wednesday showed continuing price hikes. So, we're not alone. The United States isn't alone. We're seeing it in many different places. But we do have one line open, 613-750-1310. We have some calls here. I want to talk about the hospital. Let's over to Barry in Ottawa. Barry, what did you think about this news that the Ottawa Hospital is asking our city to contribute $150 million towards the construction of the hospital?
Well, Derick, if they're short of money for the hospital, I think the hospital's more important than the LRT, and they should just stop the LRT until they can get more money for it and divert the money from the LRT to the hospitals, because I think with the pandemic and everything else showing up on the way the hospitals and their healthcare have been run, we need to bring that up, especially with the amount of refugees we might possibly be facing coming into this country. And I think it's just ridiculous that we have politicians like Jim Watson who just want to seem to keep going on the LRT when they're probably not even going to have people riding on it after the pandemic.
Yeah, I mean, I think, the numbers are certainly, dwindling, and they were before the pandemic. I mean, we can put a lot of blame on the pandemic. There's no doubt about that, Barry. But I think you do come up with a good point. When you look at what we're spending, I mean, I don't think we're not going to stop construction on phase 2. I mean, it's well underway. We can't just stop that. But when it comes to phase 3, which I know many people listening right now will talk about its importance.
Well, look out in Canada with the park and ride.
Oh, I know, Barry. We've talked about that on the show. It stops in the middle of nowhere.
Well, they can do the same thing if they're going south, and I think it would be a good faux pas on Jim Watson's record that if it did end out in a field with a big park and ride parking lot, because I think politicians all around, not necessarily Jim Watson altogether, but I think all our politicians have failed us on the hospitals, and after having a couple of excursions into the hospitals into the last couple of years myself,
right,
and seeing the condition with the nurses and how hard they're working, and how little help there's been for them, that I really think we should concentrate on our hospitals and our health care and not on trains for people to ride, especially when it looks like a lot of people are going to adapt and move on into the future and quit riding trains, and they're going to ride the keyboard at home to do their job. They're not going to want to ride on the crowded train
right
after a pandemic.
Barry, you make some great points. Really appreciate the call today. Thank you so much for calling in. We do have a line available, 613-750-1310. Since people are big on talking about the hospital, I know Mayor Jim Watson was asked about it after council meeting. David, do we have that? Here's his answer.
On the Civic Hospital issue, would you mind if your property taxes went up to help pay for the municipal contribution to the project?
Yeah, as you know, John, for the last 3 campaigns, I've run on a platform of raising taxes to a certain level and to keep it within the cap. I would hope that if we are able to reach a positive negotiation with the hospital, the bulk of those funds would come from costs that would not be borne on the tax bill itself. But that's a possibility. I wouldn't rule it out. If it's a reasonable amount spread over a long period of time, so it's not a big hit to the tax bill, and it's clearly identified on the bill as going to the hospital as opposed to coming to the city. That's been done in other jurisdictions, and it's worked out quite well.
It perhaps makes it a little easier when, you're making a salary in the $190,000 to $200,000 range. And have a great pension, and it's not going to affect you as greatly as many others. But I understand where I'm not defending Jim. I'm just saying I understand where he's coming from. If we need to raise the $150 million, we're not going to cancel a $2.8 billion project that is so incredibly important to this city for $150 million. I guarantee you that. We will come up with the $150 million, whether it's us paying through our property taxes or, I don't know, doing bake sales. We'll figure something out. Well, we have to, right? We can't just let this go. I mean, as Roger Greenberg said, there are other hospitals waiting in line, right? There are other jurisdictions waiting to build hospitals, and you don't want to be bumped down the list. I don't necessarily agree with them that it would be 20 years down the list, because we've already started. The process of clearing the space to build the hospital, so it's inevitable that it's going to happen. We're going to take a quick break, but I want to remind you, 613-750-1310. It is the Talkback Hour. We have a couple of people waiting, Bruce and Catherine. I'll get to you after the break. Call in right now. We have a line available, 613-750-1310. This is Derick Fage from Rogers TV, filling in on The Rob Snow Show.
I'm Emily Bertrand, the owner of Royale Equestrian Center. This is Diamond. She's a 10-year-old thoroughbred. She used to be a racehorse and then made the transition to a riding horse. She loves jumping, and she's used for our more advanced students. So we started the farm 14 years ago with my mom and brother. My brother was actually driving by one day and saw the sign, and we applied. There were 60 applicants, and we got it. When we first started, there was not very much here, so our property's about 25 acres, and there was just this 100-year-old barn. And from there, we built onto it. We fixed up one stall at a time, one paddock at a time. We added one horse at a time, and slowly it built into what it is today. Every year, we're improving and trying to continue to build. And most recently, we added 2 shed row barns this year. I love horses. I've been obsessed with horses since I was a little girl. The first time I got to ride, I was 4 years old, and I just loved it. My mom thought it was going to be a phase, and that phase never ended. I kept riding all through high school, and then eventually, started Royale Equestrian Center. It was my dream to always own a farm and to build a place that I could share my passion for horses with others and do the same thing for the kids that the horses did for me. So I absolutely love it. It's a dream come true. COVID hit, that was challenging. I was pretty stressed, especially the first few months, trying to figure out how are we going to navigate all of this. Our business is based on people coming in. We don't make much revenue if there's nobody coming in to ride. So that was really challenging. And then the other aspect of it was how are we going to care for all these horses if we're fully shut down and there's no income coming in. So we worked really hard. Some of our team were so kind to actually just come in and volunteer and help us out. And we made through it. We got through it. It's been hard and a lot of work, but it's also shown us how resilient we can be. So I'm happy with how we're coming out of COVID. Hopefully this is, we're nearing the end of all the shutdowns, but we've, survived it and now we're starting to thrive again, which is great. So we have a great team. We have about 14 coaches, and then we have all our regular barn staff. We have our maintenance manager and crew, and if it weren't for them, we wouldn't be able to do this. It takes a huge amount of people, and then we also have a volunteer program. The volunteer program, it helps with us, especially with our beginner program, so they help with tacking up the horses and caring for the horses when we're really busy, and then they also get to gain some work experience. We take co-op students on. We're quite a busy and vibrant place, and it takes a lot of people to make it work, even through to behind the scenes from our accountants, my family, who are always stepping in to help out. It takes a small village.
Time to talk back
on The Rob Snow Show.
Have your say and call now.
613-750-1310.
To The Rob Snow Show. It's the Talkback Hour. Talkback Hour. We are talking about the new Civic campus, right? This is the newest information about this. If you're just joining us now, let me just quickly say, and I promise I'll get to our callers. Again, 613-750-1310. The Ottawa Hospital has asked City Council to contribute $150 million toward the construction of its new Civic campus at Dow's Lake. Many city councillors say it would be unfair for local residents to foot part of the bill of the new hospital. The decision on if the municipality should cover the $150 million will, by the way, be left to the next city council, okay? But Ottawa city councillors, however, did vote 15-8 in favor of directing staff to come up with ways to fund the $150 million request from the Ottawa Hospital. Which, I mean, I agree with that. I don't see why you don't just send that to staff and say, let share some ideas, right? We have a couple people who want to talk about this. Let's head over to Bruce in Ottawa. Bruce, what do you make of this story?
Good morning, sir. How are you?
Good morning. I'm doing great, Bruce. How are you today?
Very good. I was listening to Randall Denley, and I have a different of opinion. I believe that a leader and the leaders should know when a city is in crisis. A city has a problem with a population of growing population of feeding elderly people and living in deplorable conditions.
Right.
And I believe if Mr. Denley were to think about it and say, listen, we have to take this money or they're going to pull it away, that's nonsensical. We can build enough triages across the city that could house the homeless, or God forbid, if we go into another pandemic and we need to isolate a hospital like they did at Queensway Carleton or the Civic and closed it down completely, we would have multiple triages that could house 50, 60 people in each one. But we need thinkers. We need people that are going to, like you said, that are going to stand up for a city council and listen to the people's voice.
What do you think about the choices? What do you think about the choices that we've got Mayor Shirelli, Catherine McKinney, Diane Dean said it early on, but we haven't heard much from her since the occupation and everything fell apart at the Ottawa Police Services Board. What do you think about those two choices right now, though?
I believe we look at their past record, and this municipal debt has climbed to an absorbent amount, a critical amount, that it bears on the taxpayers and the ratepayers of the properties in the city to pay it. And these people were sitting in council when they did not read a contractual agreement with the LRT contract. They put us in jeopardy in that. They also put us in jeopardy at Lansdowne Park in Osag. And now they're asking for another $350 million.
Right.
Their reputation has been established. Mrs. Deans, and I like Mrs. Deans, and I really do, has set her tone by the way she's voted. She's placated to a mayor that's put us in a municipal bankruptcy scenario. We are fiscally ruined in this city, and I'm trying to be as honest. And
no, I appreciate it, Bruce. But Bruce, are you not encouraged about the fact that at least we are going to see a lot of new faces around that city council table? We are going to get, hopefully, because of those new faces, new ideas. Are you encouraged by that at all?
Absolutely, as long as we get the people that are speaking the way the people are speaking, and I got to divulge, I'll be running for city council.
Okay.
The ward that I'm in, we're in a critical. Our response times out here are deplorable for that.
Do you mind sharing what ward are you in, Bruce? Do you mind?
I'm in Ottawa South.
Okay.
Yeah, and I think that it's like Mr. Denley said it best. We just have to listen to the people. You have to take your tone from what the people are saying, and don't ignore that. It's self-evident by how many people use. 50,000 people are using the food banks in the city of Ottawa. That's deplorable. That's not success, people.
Yeah, no, I don't think any listener disagrees with you there, Bruce. Bruce, thanks so much for the call. Really appreciate it. I want to get to a few more callers here before we get to go to a break. Let's head over to Catherine in Canada, who wants to talk about the Civic Hospital and this news that the project is short of $150 million. Good morning, Catherine. How are you?
Hi, good morning.
Good morning.
For one thing, this hospital was supposed to be almost finished because originally when the Trudeau government was elected, we had a site, we had a plan. The Trudeau government came in and said, no, just to say no. Now the project, of course, the cost went up.
I don't disagree with you there, Catherine. That's the problem with politics today is, it wasn't our idea, so we don't like the idea, so we're going to come up with a new one.
And that is costing us money. And we're not going back to the federal government to say, hey, guys, your decision,
affected us
negatively. You cover the cost. And even the model of payment to the hospital has not changed because the Trudeau government decided, no, we're not doing that. So I think the real problem is that tiers of government are starting to bleed into other tiers of government. And this is where it hits the bottom. Hospital is not a municipal obligation.
Right.
Maybe we've done it in the past, but we shouldn't have. And we have to hold them.
I don't disagree. Sorry, Catherine, I don't mean to cut you off. Stay on the line with this. What I will say is, we have always had to raise money. I mean, we have our big campaigns every year, right? Raising money for new equipment. And I mean, this $150 million, by the way, is just a part of a total of $700 million that we have to, right, that we're required to cover.
Because they already said we are going to have a campaign to raise money, fundraise $500 million.
That's right.
And then they're
Yeah.
adding another $150 million. Where does it stop? Ottawa doesn't have the pocket to do that. We already have high taxes. I mean, the other tiers of government should stop adding things to do and just take care of the basic. The basic is not being taken care of.
Right.
And when the basic crumbles, then they come to our pocketbook and say, we really need this for this essential service. Well, I'm sorry, you wasted it on other things.
Yeah,
When the
listen.
buses were running
I would love to. I would love to audit every single level of government and find out where a lot of our money goes, because Catherine, we really fund a lot of useless stuff, a lot of stuff that isn't the basics that we really need to change our priorities.
And if you think back during the pandemic, the city said, no, we're not going to reduce buses. So the buses were running empty because the provincial government is going to cover it. Now they're saying, okay, well, we'll cover what the provincial government is supposed to be doing. I mean, really, guys, put your hat on and start doing your job.
Catherine, appreciate the passion. Thank you so much for the call. Really appreciate it. Catherine from Canada was actually, Catherine, speaking of OC Transpo, I'm trying to find it here. I thought I saw a headline in one of the papers today, and maybe David can help me look this up as well, that the 80 new drivers.
Yeah, it's on the front page.
Were recently.
Oh,
that was
I've got
okay.
It right here.
Okay.
And Clint Crabtree is going to join us on the show a little bit later to talk.
Oh, terrific!
The union head for OC Transpo. He says OC Transpo bus driver operator morale is at an all-time low.
All-time low.
Largest transit union says worker breaks are being mishandled. And OC Transpo currently has approval to hire 80 more operators.
80 more operators?
There's a shortfall of. So we're going to get.
How is there a shortfall?
We'll get the scoop from.
I know. And I'm looking forward to speaking to him, because I don't understand a shortfall when we're seeing record number of passengers leaving the system. Why are we adding? Maybe the argument could be made, and I'm just throwing it out there. The argument could be made. Well, if we hire all these new, it'll be more reliable service and more people will use it. I'm just saying that argument could be coming for anyone listening.
It's a big circle, isn't it?
Okay.
It's a squared circle.
It's a squared circle. I like it. Hey, listen, we've got lots of callers waiting on the line. Want to talk about the hospital. We're going to take a quick break here for the news. We'll be back. I'll grab all those calls. I promise to get to all of you. This is Derick Fage filling in on the Rob Snow Show. You're watching on Rogers TV and listening on City News.
local news in Ottawa and the Valley. This is City News, now on 101.1 FM and 1310 AM.
It's Thursday, May 12th. Good morning. I'm Andrew Boyle. Right now in Ottawa and in Smiths Falls, 24 degrees. And here's what's making news this hour. Conservative leader in Ontario has made another highway promise today to build a new 4-lane highway 7 between Guelph and Kitchener. Liberal Party promising to train over 3,000 more mental health experts. For frontline response, party leader Stephen Del Duca says there will be a $3 billion increase in funding to mental health and addiction services. 1,000 of these new workers would deal with at-risk youth. The NDP is asking Tory MPPs to pay back their riding associations for any money used to top up for things like their housing expense. 3 so far, including Nepean's Lisa MacLeod, have taken cash. The New Democrats say not only should that money be repaid, but they would ban future top-ups if they're elected June 2nd. The Green Party has outlined its platform 6 key points: homes, mental health, new climate economy, respect, reinvest in healthcare and education, and protect nature. Leader Mike Schreiner says the other parties are only planning to paper over the cracks. The Greens say the province cannot afford to wait to tackle these issues. A reminder today from the Ottawa Humane Society: with outside temperatures approaching 30, it's a great danger to leave any pet for any time in a vehicle alone. Even with windows cracked open, temperatures inside can soar. If a pet overheats, it can lead to brain damage, even death. City News Time, 10:32. I'm Andrew Boyle. For news anytime, follow up online at ottawa.citynews.ca.
Talk back.
Hello. On the Rob Snow Show. The phone lines are open at 613-750-1310.
Now, the Rob Snow Show continues.
Well, welcome back to the Rob Snow Show. Derick Fage here filling in. So, some people get a little overexcited about issues in and around the city council table. Jan Harder being one of them about the Civic Hospital. Let's listen in.
So take your trees and your freaking parking lot and shove it where the sun doesn't shine. Because you know what? All that we're being asked to do is to give our very talented city chief financial officer the opportunity to do all she can, okay, to find out ways that we can contribute something that is acceptable to the people and the businesses in this city. And I say that's what's before us. None of this other stuff.
Well, there you go.
Sending me ludicrous emails about change the site. Have it near transit. What do you think about the transit that's already there? I mean, it's just gone crazy. So I will be voting for the staff recommendation, and I will be looking forward as a private citizen to the report that will come back. But I, as I always have been, will be helping the foundations of the medical centers in this city raise money. And I hope that all of you will cut the nonsense and start doing exactly that too. Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Elshintiri.
David and I we just couldn't wait to play that. Obviously, some frustration from Jan Harder.
I just love how Watson has to then be like, yeah, okay.
All right, then.
On to the next one. Thank you, Elshintiri. And then after that, Eli Elshintiri, the next councillor, went. He took a pause. He said, I'm not really sure how to follow that. She was fired up.
Oh, she was,
always
for
been
sure.
a bit of a loose cannon.
Sure.
Jan Harder's always been a bit of a loose cannon, but since she announced she's not running again, she's pulling out all the stops these days. She doesn't have many council meetings left, so making the most of them.
Oh my goodness. Well, and I guess I get part of the frustration, right? She's getting emails about, let's move this. It should be at Tunney's Pass. It's sort of, I'm sorry to say to people, and listen, I did not want them taking down 750 trees. As Catherine pointed out earlier, by the way, that didn't even have to occur. We had the federal government come in and go, well, we didn't like that first idea, and so then we had to come up with another solution, and the Tunney's Pasture solution, it didn't work for some would say, and I would agree, obvious reasons of just just access to the Queensway.
So take your trees and your freaking parking lot.
There you go. Take your trees.
Shove it where the sun doesn't shine.
All right. Well, some of you may be just as passionate because our lines have lit up. And let's go to Rick in Hintonburg because Rick has been waiting for quite some time. Sorry, Rick, to keep you waiting. How are you?
Yeah, I'm okay. How are you?
I'm good, thanks. Rick, what do you think about this $150 million being the responsibility of the city of Ottawa?
Well, my comment is, originally when this was planned, it was done under the Harper government, and John Baird had designated an area directly across the street from the current Civic to build a new hospital. There would have been no land clearing required, and I have never heard the real story of why that was changed, other than the Liberals didn't like it. But
it was a political decision for sure, Rick. I mean, listen, there were people that didn't want it there either because of the type of work that was being done on that land. I believe it. They were doing some research and work on different types of soils and that sort of thing. But I think at the end of the day, Rick, it was political.
Yeah, but that makes the most sense. And I pass that area quite often, and I don't see anything going on there. And it's not that big. They could have given that wooded area down at Preston to the NCC or the experimental farm, in exchange. So I still haven't heard a good reason why it wasn't built across from the current Civic. They could have built a walkway, a skyway between the new and the old Civic.
Yeah.
They could have it would have been much more functional, and they probably wouldn't owe as much money as they do now.
Rick, bring up some great points. I guarantee you a lot of listeners hearing what you just had to say are nodding their heads going, yeah, Rick has a point there. Let's go to another caller, Dave in the West End. Dave, your thoughts on this today?
Well, I second the motion. The last guy just said
what Rick
everything
had
that
to
I
say.
was about to say. And, all we do is pay for blunder after blunder from whatever level of government we're talking to.
Yeah, and Dave, I mean, Rick makes a good point. Not only that's probably the better location, but at the end of the day, it probably would have been, less expensive, right?
You said something that tweaked my call.
Yeah.
You said preparations are already underway. And those preparations, I'm sure, are going to cost $150 million, tearing down that building and getting rid of all those trees and what else they have to do. Sewer-wise and otherwise, so it's on the federal government. They were just getting back at John Baird.
Do you think? I wonder, is it worth fighting for? I know the chief financial officer, of the city, calling this the largest request for city funding, and now council has voted 15-8 to direct staff on ways to fund. I wonder, should they try to make the argument? Maybe it's not. It's not going to go anywhere. But make the argument to the federal government saying, "Hey, you are the ones responsible for making some of these changes." But at the end of the day, it's not $150 million we have to come up with. It's $700 million.
Yeah.
Right?
Well, just send the federal government an invoice.
I wish it was that easy, Dave. Thanks so much for the call, Dave. Really appreciate it. We got a couple of lines open, 613-750-1310. We're talking about the decision on if the municipality should cover the $150 million. It's not, I guess, on if they should. It looks like we're going to have to. And again, a breakdown. Total cost, $2.8 billion. Ontario government's covering $2.1 billion, so that requires the Ottawa community to cover $700 million. $500 million of that is supposed to come out of the campaign to create Tomorrow, which was, that campaign announced by executive chair of the campaign, Roger Greenberg. Do we... Maybe we just add the $150 million to the campaign, change it from $500 million to $650 million and be done with it. But I don't think that's realistic. And if you're wondering where there's $50 million missing, That final 50 million is expected to be covered by hospital revenue. So that's where that's coming from. Let's go to some more calls here. Let's head over to Ray in Ottawa South. Ray, how are you this morning?
Not bad. Yourself?
Not too bad. You all fired up about this, Ray? What do you think about this situation?
No, somewhat. And the solution I was contemplating is probably getting some private sector like investment, right, with a guaranteed rate of return, especially on the companies that are going to be bidding on the project itself. Just much like at the airport, right, the hotel that was built. Mm-hmm. It was built by the contractor itself, and they kept ownership for a good 10 years and collected from the revenue in order to pay themselves off and get a bit of return on their investment. So much like the
would it work in this kind of situation though? And I know that a lot of citizens of Ottawa are very reluctant to look at more private public sort of partnerships. Some work and some don't though, right? I just don't know how that format works with a hospital.
Well, especially the companies are going to be bidding on the project itself, right? They have a vested interest in ownership, and then over time, just they would get their return, and it would go back. They'd step out, right? And it'd be government owned again, right?
Okay. All right. Interesting. Yeah. All right. Thanks for the call, Ray. Appreciate it. Let's head over to Steve. Steve in Ottawa. Steve, how you doing today? What do you think of this situation?
How's it going, Derek?
I'm going great, thanks.
All right,
doing great.
A couple things here. The Andrew Horvath insurance thing. I think the Anti-Competition Act or Bureau should go after the insurance industry because you call for one quote from one company and then you call another one. It's the exact same thing. It's like they're using the same program. There's no competition. That's why the prices are so high. If it was real competition, the price would be a lot lower. All right.
Yeah, and I should just mention for those that are just tuning in now and you're wondering, what we're referencing, Andrea Horvath making a big announcement yesterday of a 40% reduction in car insurance and then proposing the government freezing auto insurance for a year and a half and then establishing a commission to create to study how to create a public auto insurance system. So I just wanted to clarify, just for people tuning in.
Yesterday, but about the hospital, they should build it on Fallowfield Road, right next to the bus station. Then let the emergency vehicles use the transit way. There's nothing out there. I mean, they can move the experimental farm. I don't know why we have a huge country. Move it to Saskatchewan. Move it to northern Ontario. Doesn't make sense to have a huge. Steve, you're not
going to be able to sell people on that. I mean, Ottawa really prides itself in this farm.
They don't want it on the glebe. You know what I mean? They clearly don't want it there. I guarantee you the people in Barhaven would love to have a hospital right there on Fallowfield.
I just don't know if it's the argument there, Steve. It's not centralized enough. And the other
transitway to it.
The other
downtown in 15 minutes via the hospital. Building downtown's going to be
the transitway is not a. You know what? You're not the first person that have brought that up. Of trying to figure out a way of using the transitway in order to run emergency vehicles. That there's no doubt about that. I just don't think it's a possibility.
Building it downtown. You know how hard it's going to be to build downtown on Carleton? You have Bronson backed up. You have Carling backed up.
Yeah.
You have you have a truck in front of the existing hospital. Like, it's stupid, is what it is. Sorry, but it is.
No. Anyway. Listen, Steve. I appreciate the opinion on it. That's for sure.
Anyway,
there's a lot of frustration.
Oh God. Have a good day.
All right, thanks, Steve. Appreciate the call. Hey, we've got some lines open finally. Give us a call. I know you're sitting in your car, you're at home, or you're at the office, and you're just boiling over wanting to discuss this because the lines have been lighting up. But we do have some available lines now. 613-750-1310. We're talking about this, this $150 million that is the Ottawa Hospital is asking from the city. And, of course, the city has now been city staff tasked with coming up ways to fund that $150 million. We also mentioned as well, the Conservative leadership race going on right now, the federal Conservative leadership race. David and I went through some of the, sort of recapped what we saw in the televised debate that was held at the Edmonton Convention Center. So if you happen to have watched that and you have some thoughts on that, you can give us a call on that as well. 613-750-1310. We're going to take a quick break and we'll be back with the final segment here on the Talk Back Hour. I'm Derick Fage, filling in for Rob Snow right here on City News.
spending time. What's going on outside of my mind? All the pointless things we did, just a recipe for being broke as shit. I wish I could spend countless hours wasting away with all the pair of flowers. Oh, he really has time for that. The thing itself or the aftermath. You can't always go back to the battle days. It's your fingers and the size of glaze. If you look back and don't see the battle days, you still must be living in them. People now, and the youthful kings, have they held the power? Or are they on that quick decline, still holding on to a long line? You can't always go back to the battle days. It's your fingers and the size of a glaze. If you look back and don't see the battle days, you still must be living it on. Turn your head and look behind. Just waiting patient for your decline. Turn your head and look behind. Just waiting patient. And tell myself I can always check out. Backslide wine. Russian mouth, dirty clothes and darkened eyes, and nose running out of time. You can't always go back to the battle days. It's your fingers and the size of glaze. If you look back and don't see the battle days, you still must be living it on. You can't always go back to the battle days. It's your fingers and the size of glaze. If you look back and don't see the battle days, you still must be living it
on. Talk back.
On the Rob Snow Show.
Have your say and call now.
613-750-1310.
Welcome back to the Rob Snow Show. Derick Fage here, filling in for Rob Snow today and tomorrow. It is the Talk Back Hour. It is the final segment of our Talk Back Hour. We have a couple of lines open. 613-750-1310. Everyone wants to talk about this latest on the long and winding tale of the new Ottawa Civic Hospital, right? The Civic campus. The project, they say, is short $150 million, and it appears it's fallen to the city of Ottawa to come up with that cash. And by the way, coming up after the Talk Back Hour, Carol Meehan, City Councillor for Gloucester South-Nepean, will be joining us. We'll get her reaction because City Council has voted to have staff study raising $150 million from municipal coffers for the new Civic Hospital. So they're going to try to come up with some ideas on what can be done. Certainly a tax levy is something that will be considered. I know that many councillors have looked at that and said, you know, that's a no-go. That is an absolute no-go for them. Outgoing Mayor Jim Watson saying that, you know, he can see that as a possibility spread over for, you know, many, many years. And we want to get your reaction. 613-750-1310. Let's head over to Sheila. Sheila in Ottawa South. Sheila, good morning. How are you today?
I'm very well, thanks. And
Excellent.
How are you?
I'm doing great, thank you. What do you make of this, Sheila?
Well, when I called, I only had one subject, and that was the Civic. But when I heard that man talking about the experimental farm, he's away out to lunch.
Okay.
The experimental farm should stay where it is forever. Full stop.
I agree, Sheila. I agree because I think, it's just one of those unique things that makes this city incredibly special. I mean, it's the only working farm in the middle of a city in all of Canada, and if I'm not mistaken, all of North America.
Agree with you 100%.
Right? It's a place I think I take a lot of pride in. I compare it as well. I mean, maybe it's not the best comparison, but I look at the Sir John A. Macdonald Parkway, and I look at that parkway, and the prospect back when they were talking LRT of putting it along that parkway, and I just thought, what a shame it would be in that beautiful space that we have, and we're talking green space all the time.
I know
these days, right? And taking away green space, I think it would have been a shame. I understand people, talking about development along waterways like the Ottawa River, and if you look at Vancouver and Toronto and how dynamic it is, I get all that, but I still think there's something special about Ottawa and keeping spaces like that and the experimental farm.
And I think most people agree with us.
Yeah, I would say certainly, the voices that I've heard. I mean, we saw Imagine Ottawa, had a rally out of the experimental farm in Queen Juliana Park, and I think it was another 20 organizations joined them, protesting that specific spot. So there are voices out there that have been quite loud and sharing their disappointment.
Now on to the Civic.
Yes, let's move on to the Civic. What do you got, Sheila?
Well, first of all, it was a political decision. There's no doubt about it.
Yeah, it's a shame.
You're just talking about green space. How much of that are we going to lose for a garage? It just burns me to no end. We drove by there yesterday, and that's where we had one of our daughter's pictures taken, and I said to my husband, well, the next time we drive by, maybe there will be a big garage there. So as you're sitting at a restaurant in Dow's Lake and you're looking across, that's what you see.
Yeah, I was down. I know the Tulip Festival doesn't start until this weekend, but my wife and I were down there yesterday afternoon, and the tulips in full bloom. And I just walking along those areas, and to think, what could happen in the future to these, really special spots. It touches.
I can't believe that's the most popular spot in the city of Ottawa.
The experimental farm?
Yeah.
You think?
Yeah, where they're putting the garage.
Oh, the garage itself, yeah.
And then another thing about when you're wondering if Ottawa should participate in giving the millions of dollars that they think we should, I agree Ottawa should give some.
Right.
And I'm going to say this with tongue in cheek, but I mean it.
Okay.
What about asking the Quebecers for some money? When their health isn't the best, they don't mind coming over here to use our hospitals.
Yeah, and that facility will serve not just residents of Ottawa, right? We're talking Eastern Ontario, Western Quebec, Nunavut.
But they're asking Ontario to give. They're asking the city of Ottawa to give some.
Yeah.
Why don't they ask the city of Gatineau?
Yeah, it's not going to happen, Sheila. It's not going to. I know that people certainly use it, but the percentages are quite different from who's using it here in our region compared to who's using it in Quebec and Nunavut and those areas.
Oh yeah, and I agree with you, but I had to say that.
I appreciate it, Sheila. Appreciate the call. Thank you so much for calling in. You're very welcome. Got a couple of lines available if you want to jump in before we run out of time here in the Talk Back Hour, 613-750-1310. As mentioned, Ottawa Mayor Jim Watson said he wouldn't rule out the possibility that a hospital levy could show up on municipal tax bills in the future to help fund this. City Council, as I mentioned, has voted in favor of a plan to direct staff to find ways to raise $150 million to help pay for it. I don't really understand anyone that voted against it, to be honest. Why not have a look into it, right? Look into it and see what we come back with. Several councillors raised concerns about putting the onus on municipal taxpayers for something that falls under provincial jurisdiction. Again, don't disagree with it. The province is putting in $2.1 billion, so they are asking our community to come up with $700 million, $500 million of that coming from a fundraising campaign. Sean Menard speaking out saying the provincial government responsible for health care in its totality I wouldn't agree 100% with that, because each and every year we run fundraising campaigns to raise funds for our various hospitals. You know, CHEO has their fundraising efforts for new equipment. The Ottawa Hospital has fundraising for new equipment, new research that's going on. Let's head over to Scott in Hintonburg, who wants to talk about the hospital and this $150 million. Scott, what are your thoughts?
Well, my thoughts are you've got a developer who's going to be operating the hospital well after it's been built and done for many years, whose grandchildren are probably going to be rich, great-grandchildren rich off this. Why don't you get this developer to build some homes and have lotteries like every single other hospital across this country to raise funds?
Yeah, I'm not sure that, you know, the same developers that build hospitals build residential. You know, listen, we can, I mean, and that might be something to come out with as well, right?
Well, I mean, you've got an annual lottery for almost every single hospital
for sure.
in this province. So, I mean, why couldn't they raise money that way?
Well, they can. I mean, don't forget, there is the $500 million fundraiser called Campaign to Create Tomorrow, because this $150 million is just part of a $700 million that we're responsible for as a community. So we already have that 500. That's our goal, $500 million. Can we add some to that? I guess so. I mean, can we do 50-50 draws and that sort of thing?
Everybody else is doing it.
Yeah, okay. No, appreciate the call, Scott. Let's go to Margot quickly in Ottawa. Margot, you get the last word on this today.
Okay, my concern is, first of all, where the hospital is. It should have been at Tunney's pasture, and it is a real shame what they're doing up there with garages, and it's ironic that the Minister of Environment chose that spot. But also, here's something.
Okay.
That's the thing true with the library, which is now way over budget, but they're going to go ahead with it. We still haven't gotten the Breton Flats sorted out. However, look, just across the river was Zibby. You know, this council has just turned everything over and over and over again. And I do agree that that's a terrible choice for where the hospital is. I'm not opposed to us putting money towards the hospital, though.
Okay. And yeah, Margot, I think you also, thanks very much for the call, Margot. I think Margot also brings up a good point. It is estimated at $2.8 billion, but let's see what it ends up being, you know, that final figure, because construction materials we saw went up exponentially. I know they've come down a bit, but with inflation, if inflation continues like we've seen, the cost of materials and services and contractors and so forth could bring this over that $2.8 billion significantly for all we know. All right, that's it for the Talk Back Hour. Thanks so much for all the calls. Fantastic calls today, as usual. We'll do it all again tomorrow. Tomorrow will be the Friday free-for-all. So write down that number. We'll talk about anything you want to talk about within reason. Of course, 613-750-1310 is the number. Let's head over to the news. You're listening right here on City News.
I'm Danielle Allard, and I am a proud Ottawa born and raised singer-songwriter, and I'm part of Encore Ottawa 3.
Some days I'm on fire. I don't even stop. I don't even drop.
I think that this is the first time that I have unveiled a set of music that's all new music. I'm usually pulling from some of my older projects like Chameleon and Passing Notes and trying to feature songs from both of those, but the set you're about to hear has been all written within the last year. So I'm really excited to share that with Ottawa and share that with the world.
Sometimes it feels like we're falling when things are falling into.
What does it mean? Well, firstly, I'm seeing friends that I haven't seen in 2 years, so that is kind of stabbing me in the heart a little bit, but I'm also just so happy to be able to make art with all of these friends again. And what it means being in a venue like this for a local artist. I mean, Centrepoint Theatre is premier. I've been treated like an absolute rock star from the moment I just kind of knocked on the door and said, hey, can I unload my gear? Everybody's so helpful, and you're just used to kind of dragging all your stuff around, and it's such a hard business to be in, and this is a dream come true for any local artist who gets to participate in a series like this, and to also have access to an incredible film and audio crew. It's the dream.
I'm too small to house it, and it's not just me.
I really hope you like the music and just come and see all of the talent that Ottawa has to offer.
Number one for local news in Ottawa and the Valley. This is City News, now on 101.1 FM and 1310 AM.
It's Thursday, May 12th. Good morning. I'm Andrew Boyle. Right now in Ottawa and in Smiths Falls, 24 degrees. And here's what's making news in Ottawa and the Valley. People gathering for the March for Life, and that's scheduled to begin around Parliament Hill early this afternoon. The 26th year, thousands of anti-abortion protesters, along with counter-protesters, are expected to rally.
The March for Life protest, a demonstration that typically attracts thousands, comes as the reemergence of the landmark Roe v. Wade case in the States brings renewed attention to the issue on both sides of the border. A counter-demonstration by abortion rights advocates will also take place near Parliament today. Both groups will be rallying about the implications of a leaked U.S. Supreme Court draft opinion showing the court is about to overturn the 1973 law protecting a woman's right to choose. Meantime, the 9 justices of the U.S. High Court will gather in private today for their first scheduled meeting since last week's leak, the source of which is still being investigated. Karen Rebo, The Canadian Press.
Now that march gets underway at 1:30 on the Hill, going through the downtown and then back to Parliament Hill by about 3 o'clock. But police say there will be rolling road closures during that time, and they're also recommending any commuters who normally take a downtown route to maybe think of an alternative in case this goes a little bit later in the afternoon. The vehicle exclusion zone is still in effect, so that's Wellington between Elgin and Bank. City News Time, 11:02. Now your forecast with weather specialist Denise Andriachi.
Another hot and sunny day here across Ottawa and Smiths Falls. We're expected to hit near 31 degrees. Will definitely be one of the hot spots in not only the province but the entire country. Lots of sunshine today. Our overnight low for Ottawa near 16, the daytime high 31.
And right now in Ottawa and in Smiths Falls, it's 24 degrees. City News Time, 11:03. A rundown on the provincial election campaign to start this day. Here's City News Queen's Park reporter Richard Southern.
Let's start with PC leader Doug Ford. He took reporter questions in Kingston or in Kitchener rather, for the first time since Sunday. And he was asked about his education minister, Stephen Lecce. It came to light the other day that Lecce, as a university fraternity leader, participated in so-called slave auctions. Ford asked about that. Take a listen.
Well, you know, Stephen, he's acknowledged that it was inappropriate, and he's apologized for attending this event as a teenager. And, you know, Minister Lecce has been a strong advocate of combating racism in schools, and he has my full support.
Meantime, another Liberal candidate has been dropped by the party, the third in as many days. This after the NDP revealed the Liberal candidate in Chatham-Kent-Leamington made homophobic remarks on Facebook a number of years ago. Here's NDP leader Andrea Horvath.
Homophobia is painful, it's hurtful, and it's something that we need to call out every time we see or hear examples of that kind of activity.
It's now not clear if the Liberals will be able to run a candidate in every riding. Green Party leader Mike Schreiner, he's releasing his fully costed platform right now. Richard Southern, City News.
City News Time, 11:04. Nobody injured in a shooting that damaged a car in Blossom Park. About 11 o'clock last night, police officers called to Fox Hollow Crescent after reports of gunfire. Now, once on scene, they found a vehicle damaged by bullets. Investigators are looking to speak with anyone who witnessed the shooting or who has any information. Russia is warning that it will have to take what it calls military technical steps in response to Finland's decision to join NATO. Finland's leadership said they want to join the alliance without delay. Moscow says the move will, quote, inflict serious damage on Russian-Finnish relations as well as stability and security in Northern Europe. Neighboring Sweden expected to decide on joining NATO in the coming days. And Ottawa Senator defenseman Thomas Chabot has been named the Team Canada captain for the World Hockey Championships. Canada faces Germany tomorrow, their first game. It's in Helsinki, the first game of that tournament. I'm Andrew Boyle for News Anytime. Follow up online at ottawa.citynews.ca.
He's a pillar of community opinion.
The Rob Snow Show returns
on Rogers TV and City News.
101.1 FM
and 1310 AM.
Welcome back to the Rob Snow Show. Derick Fage here, filling in for Rob. We've just been talking about this latest news, local news. Ottawa Hospital asking the City of Ottawa to contribute $150 million toward the construction of its new Civic campus at Dow's Lake. By the way, there was a vote at City Council looking at, asking staff to look at some ways that they could come up with to fund this $150 million request from the Ottawa Hospital. The vote was 15-8 in favor of directing staff. Voting against the report were Sean Menard, Riley Brockington, Diane Deans, Jeff Leeper, Teresa Kavanaugh, Catherine McKenney, Ralston King, and our next guest, Carol Ann Meehan, City Councillor for Gloucester South-Nepean. Carol Ann, how are you?
Good morning, Derick. I'm fine, thank you.
Good morning. Great to have you here. Carol Ann, you also tabled a motion asking that staff look into a lottery to help raise funds. We'll get to that in just a moment, but maybe just your thoughts on the reasoning behind voting against this report.
Well, I want to make it really clear, Derick, that the thing is I'm not voting against the Ottawa Hospital. There's no one around the council table that doesn't agree that we need this hospiel desperately, and 100%. We should have had the shovels in the ground years ago.
Yep.
The reason that I voted against this motion is because we believe, I believe personally, that we should not be asked to fund this $150 million because essentially we are $750 million. We're looking at $750 million all told to fundraise for this hospital. And the money request is coming from the Ottawa Hospital Foundation. But I think that the province should have been asked, to add $150 million onto the price tag of what they're already contributing. This essentially is tantamount to a download of more services onto the municipal tax roll. And quite frankly, we're going to be the only municipality who antes up this amount of money, a municipal portion toward their hospital. No other municipality in the province does that. So why we're going to agree to do this in Ottawa is really a question that we were debating yesterday.
Yeah, I'll have to go back and have a look, Carol Ann, because it was my understanding that there were some hospitals that did have to ante up. Vaughan comes to mind. I can't recall the other municipality off the top of my head that this wasn't something new, but let me look back into that because we'll look into that.
Let's compare it to Toronto then. So Toronto said no, that they were not going to do this, and I think it's well within our rights as the municipality of Ottawa Carleton, the capital of Canada, to say no. This is healthcare is a provincial responsibility.
Agreed.
We do appreciate the $2.1 billion that you're giving us for this hospital, but it should not come back on local taxpayers to fund $150 million. This hospital serves a very wide region, Northern Ontario, Eastern Ontario. It shouldn't just be the taxpayers of Ottawa who have to, we're talking today about a possible tax levy.
Right.
I don't think that I don't think that we can afford this. I do agree that staff will probably be very innovative in coming up with solutions, but the bottom line is that we should not have to be asked to support this.
I agree 100%, but let's just look at it in the other. Let's just say perhaps it becomes inevitable. Why not just get staff, right? To have a I just don't understand why you'd vote against. Anyway, that doesn't necessarily matter in this case. Let's talk about the fact that you also asked about a motion that staff look into a lottery to help raise funds, because you did mention it is a provincial responsibility, but I mean we do fundraising every year for our hospitals, right? For new equipment and things like that.
Yeah, sure. But the thing is, we're looking at all options, right? And I think a lottery is something that a lot of us are accustomed to. We've seen the ads on TV from province-wide, probably even Canada-wide, to fund the Princess Margaret Hospital in Toronto. And it raised, Derick, over the last 20-some years, well, actually since 1996, the Princess Margaret Hospital in Toronto has raised $546 million in net income. Yeah. So that can appeal to people right across, for a wide range of areas. And if they can afford to support a lottery and they're interested in winning a big prize, and I think that we could hold a lottery like that here for the Ottawa Hospital, I think it would be a great idea. And even if it didn't raise $150 million, it could raise quite a big chunk of cash, and then maybe we could figure out a way to top it up. But I think we have to look at all ideas right now.
Right.
I was surprised yesterday that that the idea basically was cast aside by the mayor. We did pass it; it's part of the motion, that my amendment. But I heard people say, well, we don't have an agreement to hold a lottery. This would go against agreement that we had with CHEO, that they have their lottery. And so, I looked into that. I contacted Alex Munter yesterday at CHEO and asked, is there an agreement between hospitals that only CHEO can run a lottery? The answer is no. There's no formal agreement. It is a competitive, field out there with, looking for money to support our hospitals. Yeah. The Ottawa Hospital has a precedent. They have held lotteries in the past. They haven't been all that successful. But this campaign or this lottery would be for, a world-class hospital, a state-of-the-art hospital here in the nation's capital that serves a really large area. And I think there would be a lot of interest in people buying a ticket, and of course they'd have to figure out what the prize would be, and it would have to be a pretty hefty prize. But we're trying to raise $150 million.
Well, but even more than that, Carol-Ann, we're actually looking at raising $700 million, because we also have the campaign to create tomorrow, which has a goal of raising $500 million towards that $700 million. So a lottery might be part of that as well. So I mean, there's a lot of concentration on this $150 million. At the end of the day, we're really looking at raising $650 million, because that last $50 million is expected to be covered by hospital revenue. So this goes beyond even $150 million. We as a community have to raise $650 million as far as the Ottawa Hospital is concerned.
That's absolutely right. But the thing is, we don't want to put it on our tax rolls. People are feeling stretched to the limit right now, and I think just even the hint that we might have to see taxes increase to cover the cost of this is stressing a lot of people out. So what I was suggesting is that we look at all options. When we send this back to staff to ask for their input on exploring all kinds of options, a lottery should be part of the discussion as well.
Just going back from a CBC News article, Windsor and Vaughan, for instance, have contributed funding for hospital construction by way of a tax levy or issuing debt, and then the town of Oakville even used funds from selling the telecom arm of its hydro utility to contribute to its hospital. I'm not recommending any of these. I'm just saying there are examples of this. And then Windsor raised $108 million through a funding formula that includes a 1% annual tax levy. So it's not new. I mean, it's not. Certainly, as a taxpayer and a property taxpayer, it's not something I want to see, but it wouldn't necessarily be new. $500 million already for the campaign to create tomorrow. Is it realistic just to say, okay, you know what, let's make that a $650 million campaign?
Well, why don't we go to the province and say, can you give us the $150 million to top this up? That raising $500 million in the community is a huge ask. Look, we are a really generous city.
Yeah, absolutely.
Time and year
I agree, Carol-Ann.
The amount that we raise for CHEO and the Ottawa, everybody. But $500 million is a lot of money. So there's going to be a lot of people with deep pockets that are going to contribute, and big thank you to the Greenberg family for their contribution already. There are going to be a lot of people, though, if it comes down to the tax rolls, are going to say, I can't afford this. We need this hospital, but right now, we can't afford it. So I just think we should have all options on the table at this point. And going back to the province, look, we're going into an election.
Right.
We're less than
there's lots of money being thrown around.
Absolutely.
Right?
Absolutely.
Tens of billions of dollars.
Well, I would have liked to have seen maybe some of the platforms, that were chopping the cost of maybe license stickers. Maybe that money could have gone towards our Ottawa hospital. I think we have to find innovative ways to keep our taxes low in the city. And as much as we know we need and are going to get this hospital, let's find ways to raise the funds without hitting our taxpayers right now, because we are already in debt to the tune of $3 billion, Derick.
Yeah, I know.
We don't need to add to that.
Yeah, no, agreed. You mentioned the Greenberg family. I'm just going to read this quote and just get your reaction on that as we wrap up here. So it almost sounds like one of these old Melnick, hey, if you don't come to the games, I might have to consider, moving, because Roger Greenberg states that our situation very simple. We either raise the local share or the province drops us down to the bottom of the list. There's 9 other hospitals that are on this list, and we'll drop down to the bottom, and they'll come back to us in 20 years from now and ask us if we've changed our mind. I
think that's a scare tactic, quite frankly.
Okay.
I do. And we have cabinet ministers representing Ottawa Carleton in Toronto with the Ford government. I think that they have to approach the Premier and say, we have this need here in Ottawa for 150. $2.1 billion has already been, committed by the province. $150 million more. Yes, it's a lot of money, but in the big scheme of things, I think it's quite doable.
Yeah.
So,
Caroline, do you think it's up to can you and City Council put pressure?
I think we should.
Okay.
There's we should be doing a myriad of things here, Derick. But the fact of the matter is, being threatened with the hospital funding being pulled because we can't come up with the money. You know how much work and money's already got into this project.
Oh yeah.
I think that it's foolhardy to think that we would be bumped down to the bottom of a list given the need, and we are the nation's capital.
Yeah, and I think the 20 years is greatly exaggerated, quite frankly. All right, Caroline, really appreciate your time as usual. Thanks for joining us.
You're welcome, Derick. Have a great day.
Thanks, you as well. That's Caroline Meehan, City Councillor for Gloucester South-Nepean. I am Derick Fage, filling in for Rob Snow. We'll be back with more right here on City News.
Rob Snow Show returns
on Rogers TV and City News.
101.1 FM and 1310 AM.
Welcome back to the Rob Snow Show. Derick, Fage, host of Daytime Ottawa, here filling in for Rob Snow. For those of you watching on Rogers TV, just holding up the front page of the Ottawa Citizen for you here. There it is right there. Okay. Clint Crabtree, president of Amalgamated Transit Union Local 279, has said that morale is at an all-time low because of OC Transpo's approach to complying with the labor code in certain ways. And Clint Crabtree joins us on the show right now, president of ATU Local 279. Clint, welcome to the show.
Oh, thank you for having me.
Oh, it's a pleasure, Clint. So let's talk about the morale and the reasons behind it being so low, Clint. What are you hearing from staff?
Well, I'm hearing from my members that they're very unhappy with the scheduling that's been put forward. It has pushed some of them back on weekend work. They haven't worked the weekends in about 15 years.
Okay.
Now they've been put on weekend work, and it's very upsetting, and the quality of work life is not the greatest. The morale is at an all-time low right now.
Yeah, and Clint, I think you can probably understand that some people listening and they're with their struggles with the cost of living and housing, and it just goes on and on. We're in the midst of an election campaign here in the province, and they hear about these complaints and they think to themselves, well, these are good paying jobs with benefits. How much empathy am I going to have? I mean, what would you say to those people?
There's no doubt that it's been tough for everybody throughout this whole pandemic and everything that's going on everywhere. But having said that, I mean, OC Transpo had 2 years to prepare for this. This law came out in 2019.
Okay.
Now it's been mandated February of 2022. So they had 2 years to prepare for this. And to wait till the last second is very disheartening for my members. The members have been out there since day one, going to work every day throughout the pandemic, and they feel this is the way they've been looked after and rewarded by their employer. So they're very upset.
Transpo, yeah, you're saying that they've had plenty of time to plug these holes in the schedules and make sure operators are treated fairly. So just describe that to us. So what holes have needed to be plugged in the schedule? What fair treatment has been missing over these last 2 years?
Well, now you've had a half-an-hour break implemented into the schedule.
Okay.
So the half-an-hour break, obviously, is going to create more work. So the more work, you're going to need more employees. They did not do that. They did not check with a third-party consultant on whether or not they could fit this into the schedules properly, which they could have started that 2 years ago. We had multiple meetings over this over the last 2 years, but no one moved on it. And when they sat on this and waited till the last second, now you're dealing with complete chaos. You have buses not showing up, and it's not only my members that are affected, it's the public that's affected.
Oh, listen, reliability has been a huge issue. Right. We've had callers to this show for I don't know how long now, concerned about the reliability. I just want to clarify too to listeners. So this requires Transpo to provide a 30-minute break for every 5 consecutive hours of work. Is that right, Clint?
That's exactly right.
Okay.
5 hours consecutive. Everybody gets a half-an-hour break if they work over 5 hours consecutive.
Now, Troy Charter, who is the acting general manager of Transpo, said that, has gone on to say the schedules were adjusted on April 24th and so on. Of course, as you're describing, that's been 2 years waiting. Also says that Transpo has council-approved funding for 80 more operators. Let's talk about the necessity for more operators because, again, we've seen a huge decline in people that are using the service. But I guess, part of the argument could be made that we're seeing that decline because the reliability isn't there because we don't have enough operators.
Yeah, that's part of it. And the other part of it, not everybody has returned to work yet. I mean, we're a government town. Mm-hmm. A lot of the government workers aren't at work yet, but they will be hopefully returning to work, and that's going to bring the service up. So if the service levels are going to be there, and we're going to return to a somewhat normal service that we had prior to the pandemic. I mean, we're going to need more operators to cover this work no matter what because of the half-an-hour break and the amount of service that we're putting out there. And you do not want people missing their bus. We're hearing it all the time right now.
Okay.
Schedules just changed 2 weeks ago. People are missing their buses. They're getting on the buses. They're frustrated with the operators. And then the operators are frustrated as well because of the schedule. So it's complete chaos, and it's just going to get worse. This needs to be improved immediately, or it's going to be complete chaos by the fall.
Yeah, well, that's right. Then you have, in the fall, you have, students returning to work. We'll probably see more people, returning to their offices as well. And numbers are going to go up. There's no doubt about that. And it's also my understanding that there's a suggestion that this might not be resolved until the spring of 2023. Why that period of time? I mean, that seems, I know that you've already gone through 2 years, but with this latest information that you've been getting, why would it take that much more time?
Well, they put it through at the last second, so they're saying they need time through their third-party consultant, which takes care of the scheduling, so it's out of Montreal, and they cannot get it right through their software. Now, I am not an expert on that, but that's what they're telling me. This will not be fixed till the spring of 2023. But having said that, they had 2 years. This should have been a number one priority because this is happening. So 2 years to prepare since 2019 to get this right for April or February 2022, which didn't happen.
Clint, what's your message to listeners that rely on public transit? What's your message to them that when they're frustrated and they see this conflict and battle going on, obviously between the union and Transpo itself, what do you say to them?
Well, I don't think there should be a conflict or battle between the union and OC Transpo because we want to provide a reliable service. My members are out there, they're working, they want to provide a reliable service. But if you're going to put out a schedule like that that's not doable and it's going to affect the public, everybody's going to be frustrated. So that's where the frustration lies, is they need to get the scheduling right. It needs to be the number one priority right now. No questions. It's got to be the number one priority. They got to get it fixed because it's going to be complete chaos. You're going to have frustrated members of the public that are going to turn away from public transit because of this. And that's what we don't want to see. We want people taking the bus. We want our members happy as well. No frustration. Makes for a better place altogether.
All right. Appreciate you taking the time to speak to us today, Clint.
No, thank you. Thank you for having me. Have a good day.
You're welcome. That's Clint Crabtree, president of Amalgamated Transit Union Local 279. We're going to be talking international affairs coming up after the break. This is Derick Fage filling in for Rob Snow right here on City News.
news in Ottawa and the Valley. This is City News, now on 101.1 FM and 1310 AM.
It's Thursday, May 12th. Good morning, I'm Danielle Bain. Right now in Ottawa and Smiths Falls, 27 degrees with partly cloudy skies. Here's what's making news this hour. Protesters are expected to gather for the March for Life protest today at Parliament Hill. This is the 26th year, and thousands of anti-abortion protesters along with counter-protesters are expected. The march starts at 1:30 in the afternoon at the Hill, going through the downtown core and back to Parliament Hill by 3. Police say there will be rolling road closures starting at 1 and suggest downtown commuters think of an alternate route. The vehicle exclusion zone remains in effect along Wellington between Elgin and Bank. On the provincial campaign trail, Doug Ford took questions in Kitchener this morning for the first time in a few days and addressed the scandal regarding Stephen Lecce attending a slave auction event in University. Ford says Lecce has acknowledged his mistakes and noted Lecce's involvement with combating racism in schools. Ford says Lecce has his full support. The Ontario Liberal Party has dropped its candidate in the riding of Chatham-Kent-Leamington over comments Alec Mazurek reportedly made on Facebook using a slur for gay people. It's the third time the party has ousted a candidate this week. Ontario NDP leader Andrea Horwath says it's time to treat mental health the same way we treat physical health. If her party wins Ontario's June election, Horwath is promising to deliver universal mental health care. And in sports, Ottawa Senators defenseman Thomas Chabot has been named Team Canada's captain for the World Hockey Championships. Canada will face Germany tomorrow in Helsinki in its first game of the tournament. City News Time, 11:32. I'm Danielle Bain for News Anytime. Follow up online at ottawa.citynews.ca.
Strong voice.
Strong opinions.
The Rob Snow Show returns on Rogers TV and City News.
101.1 FM and 1310 AM.
Well, welcome back to the Rob Snow Show. Derick Fage here from Rogers TV filling in. And it is time to talk some international affairs. And like we do each and every Thursday, it is time for The World with Elliot Tepper, Carleton University International Affairs Professor. Professor Tepper, good morning. How are you today?
Good morning. Nice to talk to you again, Derick.
Same here, Elliot. Let's, attention, of course, when we talk international affairs, automatically we turn our attention to the war in Ukraine. And, this is something of significance that you wanted to talk about, and that's the fact that Finland and Sweden want to join NATO. Can you explain to us the significance of this?
Yes, I think this is one of the many really significant changes already brought about. I think what we're seeing, and I've talked to Rob on this show before about it, is a new Europe being created in front of us. And Mr. Putin is the father of the new Europe. What he's done in this case is forced a fundamental reevaluation, not only by Germany, which has made a U-turn in what its foreign policy has been, but two states that have had neutrality as the center of their foreign policy identity. In Sweden's case, it's coming out now, it's been 200 years that they've not taken part in any conflict, that they declared even during Second World War that they were neutral. Finland has been neutral since the very end of the Second World War. Again, it's central to their identity, and they've turned basically on a dime. Their population, the polls are showing, have strongly supported, saying it's time now to really change because Russia's invasion of Ukraine has made us see the value of being protected inside the NATO alliance.
Right. Russia, I think no one's surprised that Russia has vowed to respond. Why is that, and what do you think that response could be?
Well, it's a fundamental change in the security architecture of Europe in favor, basically, of containing Russia. It's a deterrent and defensive posture. As you know, the core of the NATO is an attack on one country is an attack on all.
Right.
Ukraine is not a member of NATO, and now suddenly, and very swiftly, Finland and Sweden say they want to be. By the way, Finland said, Mr. Putin, if you wonder why we're doing this, just look in the mirror. So that's pretty clear and direct. It's the opposite of what Mr. Putin wanted. So what can they do about it? they vowed to respond. Russia,
because that's always concerning, right? When Russia, this entire war, when Russia has said that, I mean, people, the red flags go up right away, Elliot.
Yes, what they've, even prior to the beginning of the war, one of the things that has struck me the most about all of this, because it's the existential threat to the existence of our species on our planet, has been the raising of the nuclear threat by Mr. Putin before he got underway in his invasion. And he's repeatedly raised the nuclear threat, and he's doing so here. In terms of what you've asked, what can they do about it? There's something called the Kaliningrad salient, which nobody's paid much attention to. It's a piece ended up being Russian, even though it was German. It's squeezed right in between Poland and Lithuania, which means it's in the vicinity of the Baltic states. And now Russia is saying, we will rethink our posture, meaning we will now put hypersonic and nuclear weapons into Kaliningrad as a response, and you all now will have to think about that going forward. So that's been their response.
And so what would the response from NATO allies be, if that does come to fruition?
Well, Poland has said, or perhaps it's Lithuania has said, oh, this is silly. They've had there's nuclear weapons there before, right. And we know that. But it does mean, on the one hand, Russia now has a NATO state, that is, Finland has a 1,300-kilometer border right up against Russia. So there's now a much stronger presence, and Sweden right next to it, reinforcing NATO as a containment state right up against Russia, and that's what they're referring to. And now they're saying, well, we will just skip over that and threaten you. But it is undoubtedly one of the several fundamental shifts as a result of this war.
Well, what are the chances that Finland and Sweden would become members of NATO, and how quickly?
Oh, that's interesting. It's going to happen very, very quickly.
Really?
Finland has already officially announced today. This is breaking news. Finland has gone ahead with what I talked about with Rob last week, making the formal commitment. Yes, we now are going to apply.
Okay.
The Secretary General of NATO has said, we know that both of these states are going to meet our criteria. They will have very swift acceptance. But what about meanwhile? So the Secretary General of NATO has said, we will try to find a way to protect them after they make the application, but before they're members, we'll find a way to do that. And apparently the United Kingdom is now offering a strategic defense agreement in the interim to cover those two states while they're still not officially members of NATO. So Sweden is very likely to follow suit in short order.
Interesting. This is going to be fascinating to watch. Well, let's move closer to home, Elliot. The Prime Minister and our Foreign Affairs Minister visited with President Zelensky in Ukraine this week. What was the significance of that visit? If you follow it on social media, there's obviously mixed feelings about it, but your opinion on the significance of that visit?
Well, I just talked about the new Europe. This is a new tripwire. I think it's a very significant visit. There was a lot of domestic pressure. Everybody else is going, why aren't we? Well, I said last week, I suspect something's in the works. And sure enough, something was in the works. The Prime Minister and the Finance Minister, who's, of course, Chrystia Freeland, who speaks Ukrainian, I think Russian as well, and our Defense Minister was there returning to Kiev to open the embassy there, to raise the Canadian flag on the Canadian embassy, which had been closed when we pulled out. So I've called this a new tripwire because we should remind ourselves that, as I've tried to do since the start of this crisis, that there had been something called an Operation Unifier. Canada was training Ukrainian troops, but so was the UK, so was the US, and all of that got pulled out in advance. And what Mr. Putin saw was, these two nuclear-armed states, these three NATO states, aren't going to be there. And I said, as a thought experience, what would happen if instead what's happened next door with Operation Reassurance, where Canada and other NATO countries are in the Baltic NATO states saying, we are there to deter any Russian aggression. Had that been done in advance of the buildup by Mr. Putin, the shoe would have been on the other foot, Derick. He would have then had to say, do I want to mess with these nuclear-armed states? That didn't happen. So I'm viewing this in that particular context. Instead of having troops on the ground, now we are putting diplomats on the ground, and Canada is joining an increasingly large number of countries. I think the U.S. has already backed the U.K., Italy, France, Turkey is there. Something close to 20 countries have now reopened their embassies in the capital of Ukraine, so that, in effect, if Russia does want to go back to the capital city and trying to take it with an operational activity, they would now have to roll over a number of Western diplomats to do so.
Yeah, and of course, force. Yeah, I guess I imagine would force those countries to get involved, right?
Well, it would certainly. Again, I'm calling this Operation Reassurance inside Ukraine, this time using diplomats instead of soldiers to put their bodies on the ground. One of the things we have to emphasize repeatedly when we talk about Ukraine, we could talk a lot about changes in the battlefield and so forth, but the level, the quantity and the quality of armaments now going in to Ukraine has gone up very sharply. But ultimately, it's only Ukrainian boots on the ground facing off against Russia, which is performing what is demonstrably criminal acts of war right in front of us. So Mariopol, for example, is crumbling as we watch.
Right.
However, the capital city is no longer likely to be as directly targeted, one hopes, as a result of having our people there.
Staying on the topic of Canada and our standing in the world, let's talk about Canada's place in the world. This week, there are a few news stories suggesting Canada's standing in the international community is wavering. A U.S. senator essentially accused Canada of being freeloaders when it comes to defense organizations. A column in the Globe and Mail this morning by Conrad Yakubuski says Canada needs to put up or shut up on missile defense. How would you characterize Canada's relationship with our defense partners?
That's a good general question. The specifics of the continental defense can get us into the weeds in a hurry. However, I'd put it this way. There's a short-term and a long-term answer to your general question, what about our standing in the world? In the short term, in regard to the Ukraine crisis, I think our standing has probably gone up, and gone up quite considerably. We have been in the forefront, Canada has been in the forefront of responding to the crisis in Ukraine. We are full partners in every aspect of the war in Ukraine, from humanitarian relief to providing military equipment, and of course, as I said earlier, some training. I've been picking up bits and pieces. It's hard to put it all together, but it appears that our secretary, our minister, we have a multiplicity of cabinet members are directly involved with their counterparts in Washington and in Ukraine, so that Minister Anand is apparently in regular contact in those two areas, in those two places, and so is our finance minister. We put in place a different sanctions regime than any place in the world, and we're lobbying for others to join it. This gets complicated, but we have a sanctions legislation that we are currently updating so that we can now seize and sell assets from Russians on the sanctions list, mainly the oligarchs and their organizations, and give that money to Ukraine. But we have it as a law, not as a one-off. We will have in short order, and we're urging, and this is, again, something you pick up by watching, Chrystia Freeland has gone to the G7 and said, here is a model you could all adopt. Then it becomes a very powerful tool, among many others, of reacting to what's happened in Ukraine.
Right. I know we want to get on to some other topics, but just have a couple of more things that I want to chat with you about concerning Russia. So we're going to take a quick break here.
Sure.
We'll be back right after this with Carleton University International Affairs Professor Elliot Tepper. And you're, of course, listening right here on City News and watching on Rogers TV.
If you don't want to die young, you're gonna get old. Don't keep that home fire burning. Gonna wake up cold. Be thankful for the sunrise for each and every day. 'Cause it only takes one lightning strike to get all away. You can't blame the water, you can't blame the drink. You can always blame the devil, he gets blamed for a lot of things. Darling, I can tell you that blaming won't get you far. It's only walking through the fire they learn just who you are.
If you talk while your mind is racing, you can't say what's really true. If you love while your heart is racing, it gets hard to follow through. You get caught stealing daylight, you're gonna have to do the time. 'Cause pennies don't fall from heaven, and a nickel ain't worth a dime. You can't blame the water, you can't blame the drink. You can always blame the devil, he gets blamed for a lot of things. But darling, I can tell you that blaming won't get you far. It's only walking through the fire they learn just who you are. Can be angry as lightning, bitter as the wind, can rattle your sword like a storm coming in. Can be cold as a rock, mean as a snake, hard as a bullet, never own your mistake. Put your money on the same old pony, he ain't paid out yet. Seems he always comes up lame, you always lose your bet. You can't get to paradise trading on magic beans. 'Cause reaching for the sky is harder than it seems. You can't blame the water, you can't blame the drink. You can always blame the devil, he gets blamed for a lot of things. Darling, I can tell you that blaming won't get you far. It's only walking through the fire that you learn just who you are.
The Rob Snow Show returns on Rogers TV and City News, 101.1 FM and 1310 AM.
Welcome back to the Rob Snow Show. Derick Fage here from Rogers TV, filling in for Rob. Just want to set up this next topic a little bit here, because Russia's Victory Day parade was on Monday. This year's event was noticeably smaller than usual. Some are suggesting Russia is running out of manpower for its war machine. There's a general sense in the news coverage that things are not well on the home front in Russia for Vladimir Putin. So here's a description from the Atlantic magazine we wanted to share here on the show. This year's, and this is quoting from the Atlantic magazine, this year's war commemoration even had a rote, empty quality, as if the Russian state is no longer capable of offering its citizens anything more than cardboard nostalgia, but also as if it assumes those citizens need little else. President Vladimir Putin made a short, dishonest speech about his invasion of Ukraine, just barely alluding to the cost and casualties. Soldiers waved Soviet flags. Spectators saw less military equipment than last year and no air shows at all, but tanks, trucks, and intercontinental ballistic missiles still paraded across Red Square. Many celebrations unfolded around the country, at least one featuring Russian children singing Uncle Vova, we are with you. Uncle Vova being Putin, of course, followed by one-arm salutes. Even as Russia carries out a brutal war of aggression, one in which Russian soldiers are once again committing terrible crimes against the civilian population, the whole occasion was permeated with a sense of grievance, as if Russia were the only real victim of both conflicts. That again from the Atlantic magazine. I wanted to get opinion. So, firstly, Elliot Tepper, the World with Elliot Tepper, Carleton University International Affairs professor, joins us again in this segment. First, can you explain what Russia's Victory Day is? And then secondly, what is your analysis of what went on at this year's event, Elliot?
Well, just picking up a bit from our previous conversation where Canada's been involved, the mention of war crimes is now in the news. So Canada's an active player in documenting war crimes and will help prosecute them. So what we saw there was a moment that everybody was watching. This is the victory, the Victory Day speech. The Victory Day is one day after the victory in Europe. VE Day used to be a big deal in Canada and around the world, but in Europe. But Victory Day for Russia is a victory over Nazi Germany. And they, I think, quite correctly, Mr. Putin and others for many years have, I think, quite correctly said, Russia has never gotten the respect it should have for having held off the Nazis for so long and suffered so much and lost so many people. And that's part of the grievance that's been building for a very long time and that Mr. Putin has taken advantage of. But did we see a new Putin on display at this Victory Day celebration?
In what manner?
He seemed subdued. He seemed... It was short. It's nothing like his recent previous major speeches that he's made. So again, is Victory over Nazi Germany Day. What he did do on that was to draw a straight line. We fought the Nazis in Second World War. Your parents fought the Nazis. We have now had to we are forced to preemptively have this action in Ukraine to fight Nazis again. So your generation is being called on to fight the Nazis just as we did in the past. And that was the primary message that he had there. What he did not do there, and this is what was speculated, this is a big moment. Normally this is basically the highlight of the year. And so
yeah, absolutely.
This is, it's symbolic, and it's got religious overtones to it almost. Some of the churches involved in this. So what he did not do was this. There was a lot of speculation, Derick, that he was going to officially declare war in order to defeat Nazis, because then he could have conscription, because otherwise the Russians are running out of troops. They're short of troops. So that did not happen. He perhaps was going to announce the formal annexation of those two statelets and perhaps other parts of what is he considers not a real country. It's really all Russia anyway, so he would formally annex part of Ukraine. He did not happen. In my view, very importantly, he did not announce brand new weapons that are nuclear. He didn't wave the nuclear wand. He didn't ratchet up the nuclear tension even further. And I thought that was worth noting. Why is he doing this?
Yeah, just to interrupt for one moment, Elliot. So why not the declaration of war? If, as is rumored, and that we're hearing quite a bit in the news, that they don't have the amount of personnel, the amount of soldiers that's necessary to end this war sooner rather than later, as far as Russia is concerned. They thought they would be in and out fairly quickly. Why not do this declaration of war then?
Because you would then have to start conscripting, having a conscript army.
Well, yes, of course, but why would he care?
He would care, apparently. We're all trying to guess about what Mr. Putin is about, but and I just did a class where I had 4 different theories of this invasion, all totally different from each other. That's a resource grab. It's not about. It's not at all about NATO. It's really just his self-preservation. He was afraid of being overthrown by color revolutions, et cetera, et cetera. No, conscription, it would be a major step. You can no longer tell the population of Russia that this is, just a quick defensive action and, it will all be over. It would puncture the bubble that their media is feeding their population about the nature of the war, and I guess I would suppose he does not want to take that route. So why is he doing it then? I think one possibility. Remember, this is a KGB guy.
Yeah,
it's a head fake. He's saying, "You were all waiting for that. We're not doing it today." But you just watch. I mean, we'll carry out a lot of our goals. We're going to do a lot of really major escalation because that was not announced, a major escalation. But watch, it was the head fake, but it possibly, Derick, is a very sober reflection. That's what I got at watching him, a very sober reflection and a reevaluation maybe as the body bags are really starting to come home. They've lost apparently twice the number of people they lost during the Afghan war.
What's the estimated losses right now?
Well,
yeah.
Good luck on that one.
Yeah.
15,000. The British intelligence 2 weeks ago had it at over 15,000 dead and many more wounded. The Ukrainian count is higher than that. We don't have anything accurate, by the way, in terms of Ukrainian losses, which are likely to be terrible.
Right.
We do know that substantial numbers of Russians have been killed in this invasion, and those body bags are hard to find. They're hard to hide from the public. You know, there was talk that the portable cremation chambers, well, listen to what we're talking about, were brought in by the Russians so they wouldn't have to send back body bags. But also it's possible the sanctions are really starting to hit. Remember, we said, oh, there's sanctions now. It's a pariah state. But actually the sanctions are just now starting to bite. They were already visible. Eurovision is on, a big deal in Europe, and Russia's banned from it. And, you can't take part in athletic events, a big deal. But it's very meaningful when the container ships, which carry all of your goods in and out of the country, will not come to your country. The cost to the country in terms of the sanctions may be possibly an explanation as to why it's suddenly sinking into Mr. Putin that he's really in serious trouble, and maybe that's why we saw a Putin. Personally,
it's sort of a somber Putin.
Yeah. I mean, that was my takeaway from watching it, and they canceled the
it makes
show
sense
that was going to go on. So that's a guess. Personally, I share the thoughts of the.
This program is brought to you